Dark clouds consumed the sky around the large castle that seemed to be located in the middle of nowhere. A man in a cloak swiftly ran through the halls of the castle and hid behind each corner, making sure to examine his surroundings before progressing. He was in the room where two large statues stood near the doors that led to the Demon King. However, he was not going to enter through there. Instead, he ran past it and stopped at one of the open windows of the castle, looking down and noticing a demon guard walking around and keeping watch of the place while on its patrol. It might have had an axe for a weapon and armor that covered its body, but it was no match for the rogue-like man who silently jumped down and walked up to slice the guard in the throat. It fell to the ground dead as the man sheathed the blade and looked up at the rest of the towering castle, before taking out a grappling hook and attempting to scale to the top. He reached a door that seemingly had a magical barrier in front of it, but the man was able to focus some energy into his index finger and aim it toward the barrier, proceeding to easily poke through it along with breaking through the glass behind it. The man took off the lock and opened the door of the window, walking in and standing above the large throne of the Demon King. He jumped down as the person on the throne had immediately noticed him and turned around to face him, saying that the castle had quite an interesting guest at that moment. But how did this man get here, and who was he? A few hours ago, a group of people were taking a rest and making their next plan while down the meeting hall of the Demon King. They were all looking at a map and believed that they could just make a direct entry through the doors. However, the man in the cloak wanted to go through a different path, since he had the skills to make it doable. The others of the group were shocked by his suggestion, and unanimously disagreed with the man and thought that it was impossible for him to do so, or believed that he would fall to his death. They all laughed at him before the main girl of the group had gotten everyone's attention once again, and said that they were not going to make any adjustments to the original plan. And this was their original battle strategy. Almeria the warrior, Seraphine the high priestess, Lena the sorcerer, and Elvie the holy knight would all four try their best to draw the Demon King's attention. Meanwhile, Roland would stay in the shadows and use his abilities to assassinate her. Roland asked Almeria for confirmation if she was truly okay with him making the kill, since he believed that it was the responsibility of the knight to do so. But Almeria was confident in her plan, since it had the highest chance of success for them by far. They've been through a lot to get there, and she believed that they couldn't lose. And Roland stayed silent for a moment, before saying he understood. Almeria smiled at his response and said that they should take a short break before doing it together, everyone proceeding to go to sleep before the battle. Roland seemed to be sleeping as well, but he was faking it, and quickly made his presence invisible before trying to walk out of their hiding spot. However, Almeria seemed to notice and asked the man where he was going. The dark-haired man grinned before saying that he would be gone for a while, making Almeria confused, until he explained that he was going to the bathroom and asked if she wanted to join. Almeria blushed and felt embarrassed for asking him, and just told the man to hurry up and go, wondering why he sounded so calm no matter what. He took this chance to finally leave, but it wasn't really for the bathroom. It was for the Demon King herself. And there he stood, staring at the Demon King who was preparing an attack against him. Despite that, Roland was going to use everything he had to kill her. Lightning came out of her hand and started to shoot in his direction and destroy the area around him, sending debris everywhere. But it did not hit the man whatsoever. He was not standing in the same area anymore, but there was also no trace of where he could have gone, making the Demon King confused until she noticed him behind her. She turned around and sent another attack, only for it to miss once more, as she was starting to get frustrated from how quick Roland was. Suddenly, she felt a voice call out to her and ask when was the last time she had been in a real battle, and if she had ever seen skills like these. The Demon King thought that she had gotten it now and summoned a sword to swing in a certain direction, causing a large gash in the ground that seemingly split the room apart. But Roland was still nowhere to be seen. The woman scoffed and whipped her head around while wondering where the man was, until she finally stumbled upon Roland inches from her with a blade to her forehead. Roland pulled the blade away, causing the Demon King to fall to the ground as blood spilled from the wound on her head. Her head hung low as she admitted her defeat and said that the Demon King's army would be dissolved, while the remnants would be ordered to retreat and not pose any threat to humans ever. However, Roland suddenly cut her off and said that wasn't going to happen. He looked down upon the woman with a blank expression and asked her to spill it out if she had a last wish, and the Demon King looked up with a soft smile. After the exchange, Roland swiftly left the castle as Almeria and the others made their way to the Demon King's castle, only to find the Demon King herself on the ground, seemingly dead before they had even gotten there. Roland made his way back to the city and was congratulated by the king, who was impressed that the Demon King, the strongest and cruelest being in history, could perish so easily. The dark-haired man said that it was all thanks to Almeria and the others, since it was supposedly their efforts that made them get to the demon castle at all. The king was still impressed that Roland was able to fight the Demon King head-on, but Roland just said that assassins like him were exceptionally strong in 1v1 battles, saying that there was nothing special about it. He had supposedly not even used a unique skill set, since he believed his ability to make him fade into non-existence and temporarily conceal his body from any method of tracking was not unique to him. Despite what Roland thought, the king had received a report from Almeria and the others that the group's combat and strategic abilities had been significantly improved ever since Roland joined. They didn't believe that they stood a chance against the Demon King on their own, and said themselves that they couldn't have made it to the Demon Castle without Roland. However, Roland still downplayed his own efforts and made the king sigh from his persistence. The old man let Roland know that he could get the title of Legendary Assassin due to slaying the Demon King, but Roland didn't want a title such as that. He wanted Almeria and the others to get all the credit for slaying the Demon King, something that the king had already been aware of Roland mentioning the moment the quest was received. Roland believed that Almeria at the least, as the first princess of the Furland Kingdom, should get the credit, since she had earned her title as a genius. Even if the king, her father, didn't agree with the title, the king still didn't want Roland to go back empty-handed, and asked for the dark-haired man to make any wish to be arranged. Roland knew the one wish he had, but it seemed to be something impossible. However, his silence made the king jump to conclusions, and believe that Roland wanted Almeria for himself, making the king frantically try to convince Roland to not marry her. But Roland immediately reassured the old man that he didn't want his daughter. The mention of Almeria made Roland remember how the warrior girl had earlier told the group that she wished that she would someday live a normal life, making everyone confused about what she meant. But Roland decided that he was going to wish that for himself. He didn't want to live as an assassin anymore. Instead, he wanted to live in peace, without trickery or deceit. Just a normal human without the worry of getting betrayed. A normal life was all that Roland wanted, making the king shocked by how easy the request was. King Randolph still wanted to insist that Roland could still wish to be surrounded by women, since making children was one of his proudest achievements, but Roland told the old man to cut it out. The king asked if there was anything else that the dark-haired man needed for his new life, but Roland said that there wasn't, and just thanked Randolph, the two shaking hands before Roland would leave the room. There was a cat outside waiting for Roland, making the old man confused and wonder if there were stray cats in the castle. However, this cat was not any normal cat. It walked down the hall before pausing and scratching at its collar, getting Roland's attention as he kneeled down and touched the pendant of the collar, which caused it to glow. Suddenly, the cat floated into the air and transformed into a woman. But not just any woman. The very same woman that Roland fought earlier. She, Layla, let out a breath of relief, since she didn't think that it was a pleasant experience as a cat, but she dismissed it and continued to walk with Roland. The ex-Demon King said that she overheard his wish, and couldn't believe that he was having trouble figuring out what he wanted, before eventually ending up with the wish of an ordinary life. Layla's necklace had two abilities: transformation and reducing the owner's magic power if it exceeded the safe threshold. After what he had done, the existence of a Demon King was gone, and he responded to the woman by saying that he recalled that there was a Demon King who got defeated by a weird guy in under 10 minutes. But Layla wasn't upset by the words, since that weird guy turned out to be a lovely man in her eyes. She said that the only reason he let her live was because he couldn't find a way to use the necklace, but she didn't care if he treated her badly or even sold her, because she was grateful that he took off the necklace for her, calling him sweet for an assassin. He chuckled and said that he wasn't an assassin anymore from that point on, and walked out the door with Layla leaning on his arm. She asked where they would go now, to which Roland said that they would go anywhere that was considered normal. But this answer only caused her to complain since it sounded boring, making Roland warn her that she was not going to get any excitement from him. And in that moment, Roland threw his cloak off, letting it fly into the night, as he was a new man now. He remembered their first time and how she claimed to have vowed to offer everything she had to whoever could defeat her. She also said that he was just simply a worthy man as her partner. But Roland didn't know if that sounded sincere. He was a human, so he couldn't tell if he could just not understand a demon's lifestyle. He asked Layla if she was okay since her ears were red, but she only responded with a squeak and hid under the covers in embarrassment. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a knock on the door who called out for Roland. Roland remembered that he chose that name and decided to get dressed since the woman said that she was there to collect the rental fees for the week. He gave her the money and the girl thanked him, but she couldn't help but ask about the certain sounds that kept coming from his room every single day, no matter what time it was. The girl was cut off by a meowing sound as a cat walked out of the door, catching her attention as Roland said that she was likely mishearing the cat's meows. She became flustered and apologized profusely. Roland became confused at the girl's reaction, before she corrected him and said that she meant what his profession was. making him realize that normal men must have jobs. It would help if he were to get one, since the money he brought was about to run out. And while he could ask King Randolph for more money, that was not the normal life he was looking for. He decided to tell the girl that he was job-seeking, and she asked if he wanted to be an adventurer. But he was not interested in that, since he supposedly was not physically fit for that life. The girl agreed, since his body did seem slim, and so she hummed and thought for a second before suggesting being a staff of the Adventurers Guild. Once he was arrived, he was greeted by a girl, and Roland told her that he was there for recruitment, causing the girl to call for the chief. A woman walked out and told him to follow her to the back for the interview, and he did as told, thinking that he just needed to perform the best he could. The woman's name was Iris Nagan, and she was the branch director of the guild, to which Roland introduced himself before sitting down and starting the interview. However, every question he was asked was met with a no, making Iris sigh and frustratingly tell him that they couldn't accept any random person. She hated how indifferent and monotonous he sounded, making him apologize as he wondered how he could make the woman believe that he had the experience without mentioning his previous job. She sighed and said that it didn't matter who he was or where he was from as long as he was capable, so she was going to continue the interview by judging his abilities. Suddenly, everything seemed to become much easier for Roland, as he asked what she meant by capable. Iris's response was that his capabilities needed to be proficiency with the sword, a basic understanding of magic, and the possession of certain knowledge and item inspection. Despite whatever she had said, Roland secretly flicked the air toward the window, causing Iris to turn around in confusion, as Roland proceeded to turn invisible and swiftly walk towards the woman to take off her underwear and sit back down without her even noticing. Iris turned back to Roland as he told her that he was definitely capable of what she asked of him, but she laughed and told him to not be so full of himself, since he also needed to be capable of rapid clothes changing. The dark-haired man held up her underwear and asked if that was enough, making her confused, until she realized that it was hers, which caused her to become extremely flustered. She held her skirt in place and asked what kind of magic he did, but he knew that all he had done was use his concealment skill at max efficiency. It was his first time stealing someone's underwear, but Roland would consider himself a professional at it. However, he still wondered if what he did was something that should have been done for an ordinary interview. Iris was struggling to form words, since she was still flustered from what happened, so Roland decided that she would probably be more comfortable to talk if he were to put it back on. And that he did, activating his ability once again to put it back on. She noticed it and became even more embarrassed, as Roland asked her if he was now capable enough for the job, to which Iris grumbled and said that he barely passed the test. Roland didn't want to accept that answer, making Iris grit her teeth before shouting that she wanted to hire him, and that they couldn't do it without him. Roland smiled and was satisfied with the answer, before promptly leaving the building, looking up at it while knowing that he would continue doing his best to live this normal life that he wanted. The next day, Roland had gotten ready for the day, getting dressed and putting on glasses for his first job in his new ordinary life. Layla, in her cat form, had called out to him and asked him where he was going out to that day, and he responded that he was going to work at his normal job. She was glad that he looked so content with this job, but he told Layla to behave while he was gone, and she said that there was going to be no problem while she was still using her current form as a cat. Roland quickly made his way out of the building and made his way to the guild, quickly being greeted by the same girl at the desk who was named Milia McGuffin. She was impressed that he passed the interview, since he was specifically recruited by Iris instead of any other facilities of the guild, meaning that he was really good with his skills. Milia didn't push anymore and was just excited that she could be the one who was a superior to someone, and told Roland that before they got started, she would give him a quick tour around the facility. The dark-haired man looked around before asking the girl about what adventurers did, causing surprise within her since she didn't expect such a question. Milia explained that adventurers were there to fulfill requests, ranging from looking for materials in deadly dungeons to seeking treasures in exchange for money. But all Roland seemed to sum it up to was that adventurers were a bunch of rookies who do whatever they're asked to. The girl told him to not say things like that in the middle of a guild, before she noticed some adventurers returning materials they were asked to collect. She brought Roland over to a man named Morley, who asked if he had any experience being an adventurer, but Roland said that he didn't have any, causing Morley to insult the dark-haired man, and saying that he shouldn't be in the way of a C-rank adventurer like Morley himself. Milia explained that C-rank adventurers made up of 10% of all adventurers, meaning that they were likely strong, but Roland seemed disappointed by how arrogant such a strong man was. Morley's job was to count all of the herbs collected for the request that a group of adventurers had brought, and he believed that everything was there. However, Roland saw that there were other herbs mixed in with the Imogiso leaves needed for the quest. These words brought anger within Morley and caused him to start shouting at Roland about how he was a plant master and needed Roland to apologize. But Roland grabbed two of the leaves and compared how one had black dots and the other didn't. The ones with the black dots were called Sariri and had no detoxification effects, making Morley realize that only half of the herbs qualified for the quest. He was about to punch Roland, but Roland just swiftly moved out of the way and caused Morley to fall to the ground, embarrassing him as he slammed the door when leaving. Melia sighed in relief and was impressed by Roland's knowledge, but Roland just said that the inability to finish one's task meant death. He said other things that made the girl confused until she laughed, since she thought that Roland was funny with his jokes. But Roland just noted to himself that people there worked in a different style than what he was used to. The next day, Roland was given the job to tidy up a corner of the room, to which Amelia tried to help with, until Morley told the girl that she didn't need to assist him since Iris was going to fire him sooner or later. She reluctantly left as Roland turned toward the mess, and seemed almost happy with how normal this task was, before a voice rang out, making Roland notice that Layla had followed him since she was bored. The dark-haired man was trying to focus on what he was doing, until he overheard some people talking about the people who defeated the Demon King, and how because of them, the number of subjugation quests might go down, and make the trading business start to struggle. Roland wondered if Almeria and the others were busy celebrating their victory at the kingdom's parade, and Layla asked him if he was really fine with it, but Roland insisted that he was, making the woman call it a waste from how persistent he was. After a while, Roland was already done with tidying everything up, making Melia impressed with the speed of his work, as she invited the tall man to have a bite of her lunch. During their lunch break, there was a certain person who was walking outside the back door, which caught Roland's attention as he went to check it out. Roland was immediately met with a group of adventurers who were upset with him for not accepting their materials from earlier, and Roland noticed Morley watching from afar. But Roland didn't want to deal with them and tried to leave, causing the main guy to get angry and try to punch Roland. The dark-haired male knew that getting caught using violence on these people would mean trouble for him, which was the reason that Morley was keeping watch around a corner nearby. So Roland decided to just take the hit in a certain way where the guy's fingers would become broken without having to do anything. He called another man to make an attempt. However, Roland didn't want to waste his time instead of having a proper lunch and returning to his normal job. Using his concealment skill, he knocked all of the men in the area out, and the last person, the girl, asked who he was. She knew that he was not a normal employee, but it seemed that her thoughts were interrupted by Roland pinning her up against the wall and starting to charm her. Morley woke up and wondered what had happened, until he peeked around the corner after hearing certain sounds only to find Roland and the girl in a passionate act, making Morley stare with horror and confusion at how and why things had come to this. He felt even worse since that girl, Tanya, was someone he had feelings for, but now nothing would come of it. Roland returned from his break and Melia told him that new staff would work at the front desk first, before getting assigned to a more suitable position. She gave him a guidebook to memorize, but he seemed to have memorized it all within seconds. However, he wouldn't tell her that. Melia would walk to the front desk and assist people, while Roland would watch to learn. And a man said that he was looking for a quest, to which Melia asked for his identification paper. When he gave it, he was acting weird and frantic, which Roland noticed, as the man proceeded to ask for every D-rank quest that needed to be finished that day. Roland took a closer look at the paper and told the girl that it was fake, explaining that there was magical modification and how weird the man was behaving. This same man was getting impatient, until Melia tried to stand her ground and said that he had a fake paper. But he still tried to insist that it was real, being told by Morley that it would be fine if she just apologized. She did, but that didn't really help anything, and Roland decided to just take matters into his own hands and try to use fire magic on the paper. It had a barrier spell around it, but that only made the lie more obvious, and Roland made the fire stronger in order to successfully burn the paper, making the man shout in frustration and admit that it cost him a lot of money. He realized his mistake as Roland explained that all of the man's goods would be disabled, while Roland internally felt disappointed by the amateur work of the disguise of the paper, since he himself would have made the smart move and chosen the identity of one of his victims, since it was harder to discover once a person got their hands on the real paper. Roland told the man that it was great that he was an adventurer and not an assassin, or else he would be dead. But despite how cool it sounded, everyone was just confused by his words. Melia remembered and said that they needed to contact the knights, to which the man tried to make a run for it, but Roland was faster, and quickly incapacitated him and made it easier for the knights to be able to capture him later in the day. The girl was in awe at Roland's skills and thanked him, but he said that there was no need, since he just wanted to make sure that she didn't get hurt, causing her heart to race as she stared dreamily. And Roland knew that he needed to try harder in order to become normal. The next day, Morley tried to ask Melia out for a bite to eat, since it was her day off, but the girl unfortunately said that she already had plans for that day, making Morley groan with frustration. While Roland was doing his normal tidying, the girl walked up to him and was curious about where he lived, to which he said that he was staying at an inn. But Amelia was surprised, since common folk normally had a house near their workplace. This struck Roland with more knowledge about how he should have been living in a house the entire time to live his normal life. But he never knew, since he never had to have a long-term accommodation in his previous job. Because of his living status, Amelia wondered if the dark-haired man had eaten a proper meal since moving there. But Layla only found this behavior annoying and noisy. The girl was confused, since she heard a woman's voice but saw no one else around them, and quickly got back on topic to say that she could show Roland around to help find his ideal house, since she was a local. As she walked away, Roland was a little confused, since Amelia told Morley that she was busy tomorrow. But Layla explained that she was just letting him down gently since that was how girls behaved, making Roland believe that being a woman sounded tiring. The next day, Roland and Amelia met up in front of the guild, and the girl tried to pet Layla since she was in cat form, but Layla only ignored Amelia, shocking the girl from the action. She dismissed it and just focused on bringing Roland to the first house, but Layla seemed to not like it, so they continued onward. Many houses later, they eventually stumbled upon a house that had been available for a long time and was owned by an adventurer, but there had been sudden disappearances of anyone who tried living there. Despite Amelia's worries, both Roland and Layla seemed content with the place, and were about to check the interior, until both of them sensed something and told Amelia to wait outside. The two walked inside and found a room with a dark aura pouring from it, and found a dark phantasm within it, and Layla told the man to try and handle it calmly. He focused magic into his arm and punched it, killing it within seconds, as a rock fell to the ground as Amelia walked in with worry after hearing weird noises. He changed the subject and said that he would take the place, explaining that he had no luggage for Amelia to help with. But Amelia still wanted to spend time with the dark-haired man and insisted that she would cook lunch, running out before he could respond. Roland touched the collar and Layla turned into her true form, telling her that they should do it, and the woman became shy and said that the girl could return at any time. Roland said that they should make sure to finish before that happens, and Layla leaned in for a kiss, before she realized that it was all a misunderstanding, as Roland told her the places that she could clean while he would clean the rest. This caused her to push him away in frustration and walk away, until she fell through the floorboards, making him sigh. Most of the cleaning had been finished and Amelia came back with an impressed expression, setting down the lunch as Roland introduced Layla to the girl. But Amelia was a little frightened due to Layla being a demon. He reassured her that Layla couldn't use magic, calming the girl down, until she noticed Layla eating some of the lunch. They all ate their lunch as Amelia offered to help clean the rest of the house, to which Roland agreed, despite Layla's complaints. The two women were cleaning in the same room, and Amelia saw Layla having trouble, causing Amelia to start poking fun at the demon woman, who got annoyed and attempted to summon one of her companions from the darkness. However, nothing happened, and Amelia just made fun of her even more. After all the commotion and more cleaning, the house was finally done, and looked way cleaner than before. And Amelia decided to invite Roland for dinner at her house, since it would take too much effort to prepare it now. Layla didn't want to go, but Roland wasn't opposed to the idea of it. And on their way, Amelia asked what the weird noise was from earlier, to which Roland explained that it was a dark phantasm that he had defeated. But this was shocking to Amelia since it was a B-rank monster. She wondered how strong Roland was, but he tried to insist that he was normal, even if Amelia didn't believe him. They finally arrived at Amelia's house and Roland met her family, which seemed like a great time to him. The dark-haired man told Amelia's father that the city life was amazing to live in, even with his adventure stories. But the older man laughed and said that the life of a normal man was so different. Find a partner, build a family, raise your children. Roland heard this and noted it down, as Amelia's father wondered and asked if Roland gets lots of invitations from women due to his nature and looks, causing Roland to smile as he remembered someone. Once he left and walked back to his new house, Layla complained about how late he was, before she was interrupted by Roland kissing her, and giving her a sign that they would do it for real that time. Roland made his way to work again the next day, and greeted Amelia, who told him that he should try working at the delivery counter for the day. A man, who is known as Nil from his adventurer ID, walked up to the desk, and wanted to take a quest of D rank, since he seemed to have been avoiding them for quite a while. Roland looked at the shelf, and found a quest about eliminating a bird called the Killer Falcon. But Roland wanted to get a second opinion and asked if the quest was too tough for D-rank adventurers. She didn't see a problem with it since all previous D-rank adventurers asked for similar quests. And Morley tried to jump in and say that they should let adventurers do whatever they want. However, the two completely ignored him, and continued discussing the matter before settling on just helping the adventurer make the decision. Nil took the quest and left, but Roland felt as though he couldn't just leave it there, and asked Amelia to take over the counter for a while he would make his way out. Iris had found him leaving and asked where he was going, To which Roland explained that he was going to check on the recent adventurer who took on the quest he was in charge of. But Iris wanted to mention that he was getting new rumors around the guild about him, and how she had also recently learned of his previous background. He didn't care too much about this, since he was just being a normal employee and started walking away again. But just before he left, he decided to tease the girl, and asked if she checked her underwear that day, causing her to become flustered and upset. As he walked through the city, Roland remembered that Layla told him that his glasses made his appearance and aura suddenly change around him. So he put the glasses in his bag and walked to the certain place in the forest where Nil should be at. Lo and behold, there the archer was, trying to shoot at the large bird, who easily dodged every arrow and tried to grab at the man. Roland saw how dangerous the situation was due to the mistakes that Nil was making, and so he decided to walk up to the archer and start giving some tips, such as the weak spots that the killer falcon had. The bird's main weak spot was when it was targeting prey. Not just any prey, but something moving like a human. The falcon was aiming for Nil, and Roland implied that Nil should let the bird come toward him and give him the opportunity, as there was nothing else he could do. Roland told the man that if he didn't have the guts to shoot down a creature like this at this level, he should quit being an archer. Nil slapped his face to give a spark of motivation and said he would try the idea, standing patiently while waiting for the falcon to swoop down at him. Despite the fear that coursed through Nil's body, he focused hard and shot at the incoming bird, as Roland walked away with a grin. He walked back to the guild with his glasses on, and Amelia's eyes were filled with tears, since she was extremely worried about what happened to him, since Iris had told her that he went to the bathroom and never got out for the hour that he was gone. Roland reassured her that everything was fine, and Morley tried jumping in again to get Amelia's attention, and to try to prove that he was superior to the both of them, but they just ignored him again and walked away to go back to their jobs. Roland continued to help other adventurers with processing their quests, and it seemed that it was almost time to go home, until he saw a familiar man walk in holding the feathers of the killer falcon, which meant that he had succeeded at the quest. Roland praised Nil, as the archer had said that he realized he had a lot more to learn, whispering a thanks into Roland's ear for what he had done. Roland feigned confusion, and asked what Nil was thanking him for, but Nil decided to just brush it off with a smile and walk out of the guild, as Roland realized that he should probably change his hairstyle next time too. Another day, another opportunity to make a good impression at work. It was currently lunch break, and Melia was eating her food with some of the other female workers before the others at the counter started to make conversation. One of them asked the girl about how the new guy was awesome, and Melia knew that they most likely meant Roland. Hearing about how there were adventurers who had even personally requested to put Roland in charge of their quests. Another girl at the table said that she heard that Roland had defeated a gray bear and saved another adventurer, causing the other person to flinch in shock as the gray bear was a beast equivalent to an A rank. But Melia was there to quickly confirm that it was true, since she was there to witness the feat. The other two were confused as to how and why Melia was there, only to learn that the quest was originally arranged by her. Initially, it was just a request to collect some nectar from Kuin flowers, seeming easy enough and considered an E-rank quest. However, it had been a long time since it had been assigned, and the guild had received no contact from the adventurer. Because of that, Roland and Melia decided to go out and look for the adventurer. However, the other girls didn't know why Roland, the rookie, was sent of all people. Melia explained that it was because it was a direct order from the branch director, Iris herself, which meant that Roland seemed to not just be any other ordinary employee. It was also not just the two of them, as Melia said that Roland brought his cat along. The girl excitedly rambling about how the feline was cute, and ate many of her homemade cookies even if the cat would keep ignoring the girl no matter what. She wondered how she could make the cat like her more. But the other two girls sweat dropped and didn't know if this was really the time to talk about cats. At some point during the rescue, Roland and Melia walked through the forest as she pulled out a map, when she became frantic about where they were. But Roland seemed to have already known where to go after seemingly memorizing every detail of the quest. The dark-haired man had never been to this area before, but they were able to go straight to the destination without getting lost after just one glance at the map. Despite this amazing ability, he still claimed that he would forget it all by the next morning. Whether that is true or not, who knows? Suddenly, Melia mentioned that Roland was able to monologue a conversation with both male and female voices. But the girl didn't know that he was actually just talking to Layla. Back on topic, Melia was asked if she encountered the gray bear, but she was told to wait at the entrance even if it didn't take that long for Roland to return in about half an hour or so. The other girls were shocked that he had completed a subjugation in such a short amount of time, but Melia corrected that it seemed as though the gray bear found her cub and ended the situation before any subjugation occurred. A voice rang out through the building of the guild as Melia's head popped up in acknowledgement, before she walked out into the hall to see the person who asked if there was anyone there. She confirmed that there were indeed workers, but explained that they were still in the middle of their lunch break. until she recognized the small boy being the person that Roland had saved earlier. He was there to try and check in with Roland, but Melia told him that Roland had already headed out to grab lunch. However, the very same man that they had both mentioned walked in through the door during their exchange, and the boy felt happy to see him. He thanked Roland for what he did the other day in the cave, as the dark-haired male patted the boy on the head and told him to be more careful next time, seemingly making the 3 female workers, including Melia, watch in awe and adoration, as Roland waved goodbye to the boy, surprised that he had been thanked despite not having killed anyone yet. Roland kept going throughout the days at his ordinary job, and was often met with many people who would ask him for help, or just flat out give him their errands or work to do. Ever since Layla followed him there that one time, she has always rested underneath a table to stay near him and watch what he would do every day. She noticed how he was being everyone's errand boy as usual, and asked if he found it boring at all. But Roland said that it was part of what a normal job would be, causing the woman to sigh and groan in annoyance, since she was starting to get tired of that sentence. Suddenly, Roland heard Melia's voice about how something was going to be troublesome, and he noticed the girl talking with 3 adventurers before walking to the shelf next to him with an exhausted expression. She was mumbling about how there was still one person missing, and was trying to find something until Roland caught her attention and asked if there was a problem, to which she explained that there was a party that still hadn't gathered enough members for the C-rank subjugation quest. Melia remembered that the area was actually near the village that Roland was in, and that it seemed as though there had been a lot more monsters around that area lately. The dark-haired male took a closer look at the paper as Melia continued explaining how the requirements might be too dangerous to complete alone, which is why it was marked with the party condition. However, the people who wanted the quest still needed one more person to complete the minimum condition, and it was the last day of the recruitment period before their branch of the guild would have to hand over the recruitment to other branches. The girl chuckled brightly about Roland's ability to be able to remember such small details. But a man suddenly called out for Roland, and that man was actually Nil, the archer that he helped earlier. Nil called him Big Brother, and excitedly asked if he could accompany them on the trip, making Roland confused and hesitant, as Melia agreed that it would be much safer if Roland went with them. But Roland was not sure if it was normal for an employee to accompany a party on a quest. Melia hummed and thought before suddenly getting an epiphany, and telling the both of them to give her some time to ask for the branch director's advice, immediately running off before Roland could have a say in it, as Nil gave his thanks to her. Iris walked into the room and casually said that it was no problem for him to join, but he still stayed silent, causing Iris to tease him and ask him if he was not confident about it. He said it wasn't that, but Iris already knew that, since she was well aware that he was already capable of slaying a legendary demon on his own, the legendary demon in question yawning under the table. The woman just told Roland that he shouldn't let his employee status stop him from joining quests, and knew that she could count on him with no worry, making everyone in the room exclaim in shock and disbelief at how the branch director seemed to trust him that much. Everyone had many questions with no answers and many assumptions. However, that didn't matter, since Roland decided to accept it since it was a direct order from Iris. Melia watched the exchange and started to pout in frustration and jealousy, as she thought that the closeness of the friendship between Roland and Iris was getting suspicious. The group walked out and Roland introduced himself, but the 2 adventurers who weren't Nil looked down upon Roland, and held disappointment in their words, as they told him to do them a favor and not get in the way. Suddenly, Nil excitedly told Roland that it was an honor to fight by his side, but Roland told the man to stop calling him Big Bro, to which Nil decided to use Master instead, which Roland also did not want to be called. They finally got to move on to their destination, and Nil and the others started to talk amongst each other about their past achievements, making Roland realize that the party was just temporary for this mission. He asked the others about their ranks, and learned that the spear guy and healer were both C rank, while Nil was D rank, and the guy with the spear asked what Roland had achieved, to which Roland only responded that it was completely ordinary stuff, causing the man to scoff and continue on. After a while, they were about to arrive at the village, but Roland said that they needed to hurry, confusing the others and angering the healer, since he claimed to be the leader of the party. He explained that there was smoke coming from the direction of the village, but the others assumed that it was just people burning wood. However, a roar suddenly broke out into the air as a wolf-like creature started to charge their way. Roland recognized it and told everyone to stay calm, and he wondered if he should finish it off quickly before immediately telling himself that that's not something a normal employee would do. The dark-haired male started to explain that the creature was called a red wolf, and had high agility and strong offensive power, to which the healer believed that the best strategy was to let the frontline approach it first, so the archer could freely shoot it down. Unfortunately, the guy with the spear did not have the same desire to go near the wolf, and started to run away as the wolf started to run at them. But Roland quickly grabbed him and slapped him in the back of the head, while saying that he would die if he kept up this attitude. Roland told him to lower his spear and hip, while keeping eye contact with the wolf at all times. And after some reluctance, the spear guy finally listened and stood his ground, despite his body violently shaking in fear. The sight of a spear caused the red wolf to stop its attack and start circling the spear guy while keeping up its guard, and Roland called for Nil to shoot a couple of arrows at it, blinding it in one eye and incapacitating it, as the guy in the front lines was told to charge forward and stab the wolf in the jaw. At last, the beast was dead and the spear guy fell to the ground in tears, before looking up at Roland and thanking him so much for what he did. Both Nil and this man started to call Roland Big Bro again. The healer was still a little shaken up from what happened, and Roland noticed before walking over and asking if it was okay for him to offer advice when necessary, to which the short male agreed without hesitation this time. They continued their trek as Roland thought about how confusing and weird it was for the red wolf to be there, when its natural habitat lay further into the south. But his thoughts were quickly dismissed when the four men finally stumbled upon the village that seemed to be in flames. The four men frantically charged into the burning village, and started to help around, to try and put out as much of the fire as fast as possible. Roland was throwing a bucket of water on some of the nearby fire, before a voice called out to him, it being the spear guy who was also holding 2 buckets of water, while telling Roland that the villagers claimed that the fire was caused by a lizard-like beast. The dark-haired male knew that a fire caused by a lizard meant that the monster was likely a salamander, and he believed that the current party would not be able to handle such a beast, so he told them to continue helping the others and put out the fire, while Roland himself would deal with the monster. He started to walk off, dropping the buckets that he had before walking toward the forest and following the markings on the ground that led to a certain area. After a while of following, Roland had finally caught up with the salamander, who was startled by the presence of another person, whipping its head around until it finally saw Roland. It opened its jaw and breathed in, as a spark formed in its mouth, before the reptile breathed out a large plume of fire that Roland just took straight on, and sliced through with one swing of his arm, the fire immediately dissipating within seconds. The salamander was confused and didn't understand why it didn't work, so it tried to use its breath attack once more, but alas, to no avail. It started to scream in frustration and anger at Roland still being alive, while he explained that all he had to do to fight against the flames was move at a sufficient pace. As the lizard started to charge forward and attack Roland, he told the lizard that it was going to get punished for what he did to the village, proceeding to slice off the salamander's arm, shoving it into the throat of the beast and punching it to the ground. Roland apologized for fighting the way he did, and started to drag the bloody corpse off in a direction as someone watched from afar in silence. This unfamiliar man started to sweat when he saw Roland, and wondered who Roland was, since he was able to put out the salamander's flame with one hand and kill it in the blink of an eye. This stranger tried to come up with theories on Roland's identity, believing that he could be from the other side. But he also wondered why Roland didn't face the red wolf straight on earlier. Suddenly, Roland looked in the direction of the stranger, causing the man to flinch in surprise and try to hide when he thought that he was spotted. Roland continued dragging the corpse away, making this man calm down just a little as he had an idea and decided something for later. The village still had smoke around it, but most of the flames had been put out with the help of the villagers and the 4 men throwing water around. Roland brought the dead salamander to the village, and the village chief was appalled, asking if Roland was the one who killed it. He introduced himself, and said that he was part of the group who had made their way there due to receiving their quest. The chief introduced himself as well, and thanked Roland and the others for the help. However, he was going to mention the other beast, the red wolf, until everyone in the group casually said that they already slayed it on the way there. Roland told the chief that they could all rest easy now, and the villagers wanted them to stay and rest for the night while they would prepare a feast as thanks for what they had done. Roland walked around the place and took a look at the corpses that seemed to all die because of the red wolf, as the chief explained how they had been living in constant fear with the monsters lurking around. Roland explained that the red wolf was a monster that could be considered as a creature with high intelligence, as the chief remembered other monsters that had appeared in the village in the past, such as orcs, that made many people choose to abandon the village. The chief sighed in frustration about why things had to be the way they were, when all they wanted was to live an ordinary life, making Roland wonder about how much pain he himself had been through to achieve such a life. With a determined expression, he told the chief not to worry, and reassured that there wouldn't be any monsters attacking the village from now on. Night fell and everyone was gathered around a fire, this time not created by monsters, while eating and drinking happily with each other. During this scene, Roland couldn't help but feel touched by it, and also remember the other people he had met to this day, such as Melia and her family. But he had things to do. Later in the night, Nil and the others could be seen drinking among themselves, while talking about the achievements they had made that day and how it was all thanks to Roland. But as they turned back to check on him, he was gone. causing them all to be confused. Far in the forest, Roland had walked back to the same spot where he had fought the salamander, and he called out to the person he noticed earlier. This man walked out with a smirk while chuckling about how Roland looked so normal, yet had the strength and abilities to fight the salamander and Red Wolf like nothing. He claimed to be an A-rank adventurer and monster tamer who was looking for strong teammates, explaining that he was using his monsters to attack villages to lure adventurers in for him to find. But Roland seemed upset to hear the plans of this overconfident man. Roland told this man that he took away the today that they had worked so hard on, but this stranger insisted that the villagers only died because they were weak, starting to laugh at the words of the dark-haired man. This man called Roland annoying, and said that he didn't need him anymore, pulling out a dagger while saying that he could still fight without his monsters. But Roland gave a cold glare, and said that he was talking a lot for a dead man. Within seconds, blood spilled from the man's mouth as he fell to the ground seemingly dead, and Roland swiftly walked away, seemingly not noticing the strange wolf-like creatures that walked up to the body. It was now the next day, and everyone had said goodbye to the four men as they walked off, while Roland wondered how Layla had been doing. But his thoughts were interrupted by Nil admitting that he followed Roland the previous day, but claimed that he didn't see or hear anything, before asking Roland if he could accept the archer as his disciple. Roland immediately said no, shocking Nil as he tried to persist with his reasons and desires. He told Nil that all he had to teach was basic, but Nil didn't care, and Roland finally didn't say no, but he didn't really say yes either, and just told Nil to hurry up as they continued walking. They finally arrived back at the guild, as Melia was excited to see Roland, but was shocked to hear about what was experienced by the group. She marked the quest as complete, and gave everyone their pay, along with giving Roland a bonus to his salary and a day off. However, he was shocked to hear what he was receiving, since he thought the quest was only a simple errand, causing everyone to shout in shock. Melia also mentioned that the branch director wanted to speak with him, and he went over to tell Iris about the monster-taming man he had met, and how he had disappeared. But Iris said that there was nothing they could do about it. She changed the topic and told Roland that as thanks for his work, she would buy dinner for the both of them at a luxurious restaurant. But he said that he had things to do, such as taking care of a cute cat, quickly leaving, as Iris felt completely defeated after seemingly losing to a cat. Roland made his way back home and was greeted by an annoyed Layla, who seemingly had a bad day after being chased by Melia and forced to eat cat food. He said that he was trying to make her happy by buying steak and wine as she asked, but it didn't seem to be enough, as she seemed to want to know what else happened at the village that she didn't already know. The dark-haired male wasn't hesitant in responding, and admitted that it was his first time killing someone out of his own will, and said that he would do his best to avoid it in the future, making Layla realize that his mind had been starting to shift ever since he started his normal life. She put a hand on his cheek and said that a demon king could only be understood by another demon king, saying that she seemed to be the only one who could understand him. He pulled her into a hug, and admitted that he felt strange and warm whenever he was around her, causing her to become flustered as she admitted that she felt the same, while hiding her face in embarrassment. Roland noticed this and how her ears were getting red, and asked if she was alright, but she just got upset and told him to find that out himself. Roland was making his way through the city while carrying a bag of groceries, trying to walk back to his house until he passed by an alleyway. He already passed by without hesitation as if he didn't see anything at that moment, but he did sense something strange and walked back to poke his head in, before walking in with confusion. That was when he stumbled upon a small girl who was dirty, bruised, and in tattered rags, seemingly hanging her head low with a gloomy expression. He stood there for a second before eventually kneeling down and greeting the small child, who weakly raised her head to look at him, revealing the slave mark that was imprinted on her neck. Roland noticed it and hummed in thought, before reaching into his grocery bag and grabbing one of the potatoes for the girl, who weakly reached out to the vegetable and bit into it. Once she was finished, she just leaned against the building once again, and Roland knew that this child was not going to survive if he didn't take her back. And that was what he did, picking up the girl and walking home to be greeted by Layla in an apron. She welcomed him and told him that the sauce for the day was the best one she had ever made, before looking into the bag of groceries that he brought and making sure he didn't forget bread, since she would need it for that night's dinner. That was the moment that Layla had noticed the girl on the back of Roland, and she asked what was with the kid, as Roland walked toward the entrance of the house, just explaining that he was going to be taking care of the kid for a little while. She asked why he would even bother doing that since it wasn't like anyone asked him to, but he said that it was not going to be a problem since they had an extra room anyway. Layla sighed and said that he could do whatever he wanted, telling him that the bath was ready, even if she couldn't help him with it since she was busy preparing dinner for the night. After a short bath, the girl had already fallen asleep since it likely helped her relax. He asked Layla if there was a way for a person to remove the slave insignia, to which Layla said that there was, however she couldn't do much, since she couldn't use magic anymore. The woman realized how much Roland had been staring at the girl, causing Layla to try teasing him about how kind he was, despite being a former assassin. Getting back on topic, Layla explained that a slave insignia was a contract that could only be removed by the one who cast it, but Roland already knew this, and said that was only if they were talking about human knowledge. Layla took a closer look at the girl and wondered why someone even made her a slave, since she didn't look like she would sell for much, which Roland agreed to, as Layla explained that humans tended to use different slave contracts, mentioning that this girl's was a common one called the Devil's Contract. It was a contract that exchanged one's soul for extraordinary magic power. However, there was an alteration on top of it, that being subordination and inability to lie. She said that she could teach Roland the spell, but if he couldn't learn it properly, it wouldn't work, and there was even still a chance that it would fail. He still wanted to learn it no matter what, and Layla became narcissistic for a moment, saying that he should be grateful that a demon lord like her would personally teach him. But Roland quickly corrected her and told her to hurry it up. After a while of teaching, Roland finally felt like he had a shot at breaking the seal, and walked over to the child, before Layla remembered one last thing and was about to explain it, until the dark-haired male just casually cast the spell first try and successfully broke the slave insignia on the girl's neck, causing it to disappear within seconds. Layla stood there with a mouth agape in shock at the fact that he succeeded at casting a 5th rank magic spell in just one try, and without making a magic circle, making his magic on par with hers. Roland asked what she meant by a 5th rank magic spell, which caused her to explain that there was a ranking system for demons, where the higher the rank, the stronger their magic would become, and Layla was the only 1st rank, as she told Roland that he had a knack for magic. Roland didn't feel like he did much, as he just did what she taught him, but Layla wanted to insist that he shouldn't be humble, as his magic was already on par with the demons. Later in the day during dinner, the small girl had finally woken up, and was startled by the presence of Roland in the room and asking if she slept well. He introduced himself and gave the girl some soup that Layla had made, saying that he couldn't guarantee the taste, but it was better than nothing, to which Layla walked in with an upset expression since she felt insulted by his words. The small child started to eat the soup, but she still wouldn't talk, making Roland hum in thought before moving his head close to Layla. She was confused, until she thought he was trying to kiss her in front of the girl, making her flustered, even though she didn't fight back. But it was just clearly a misunderstanding, as Roland put his hand on her collar and transformed her into her cat form. Layla yelled in confusion and anger, until the girl started to speak, excitement lacing her wide eyes, as Roland picked up the cat and told the girl to take care of it, while the cat complained greatly about the situation, and yelled at Roland to turn her back and have the child unhand her. The girl asked if taking care of the cat was the order from her master, but Roland told her that he was not her master, and he wasn't forcing her to do it, proceeding to tell the both of them that he was going to work, and if she needed anything, she could ask the cat. Roland went to work at the guild and looked through the members list, realizing that the race, gender, and age of all adventurers were not registered. Melia noticed and asked what he was doing, until he explained that he just wanted to confirm something, but a meow interrupted them and was heard outside the building. Roland opened a window and asked the girl what she was doing there, before eventually letting her into the guild, while everyone stared and talked about how dependable Roland was for taking care of the girl. He apologized for the girl coming there, but Amelia said that it was fine, and that they could try to ask permission from the branch director. However, Morley walked in and said that wasn't going to happen because the place was not a nursery, to which Roland thought that was fair. Morley started to complain about how he hated children since they were loud and annoying, but Iris walked into the room after all the commotion and learned about the situation, before immediately giving permission for Roland to let the girl stay, as long as she didn't cause any trouble. Morley was confused and frustrated, asking Iris if it was fine to give Roland so much freedom, and trying to complain that he was always the first to go home and not take work seriously. But Iris said that was only the case since he would always finish his work, and give himself the opportunity to leave work earlier because of that. Iris just told Roland to keep the girl in the reception office, and he told the child to behave while he would come to check on her every once in a while. The girl smiled brightly when she was patted on the head by Roland. Once work was done, the girl was taken back to the house of Roland and Layla. They had given the girl a name, Maylee, which was an old demon word that meant blue sky, since they needed something to call her since she didn't remember her own name. The girl seemed to be happy with the name and jumped in joy, as Layla asked Roland what he was planning to do with the girl now, to which he responded that he was going to make her an adventurer. He was also wanting to find someone who could teach her how to be normal as well, and Layla was about to make an offer before Roland suggested to himself that he could ask Melia for help. causing Layla to walk away in a huff. Eventually, Roland would tell Maylee about the training sessions that they were going to have every day until morning. Their first sessions were just going to be running, but the girl seemed to already be having trouble with it. She would get tired at first, but with time, Maylee would learn to build that stamina, and she would become more used to it. Roland asked the girl if she remembered her time as a slave, but Maylee still couldn't remember a single thing from her past. Layla called them in for dinner. However, she was not in a good mood, as she glared at Roland and told him that she was not a housekeeper. He reassured her that he never thought of her as one, and so Layla admitted that she just wanted more attention from Roland, since he seemed to be giving all of his attention to the girl. But Roland couldn't tell what she meant and asked if she wanted him to train her as well, making the girl whine in complaint. Night came around and everyone seemed to be asleep, except for Roland, who immediately noticed an unfamiliar presence outside of the house. He went out to deal with it, but was confused as to who would have been the target of the assassin, since it was highly unlikely for anyone to know of Layla's identity, so this had to mean only one thing. The assassin was here for the girl. As the days continued, Roland continued to train Maylee, and she would hold a branch while trying to swing at the dark-haired man who dodged every attack with ease. Even if none of the attacks had landed, he still praised the girl, and told her that she wasn't doing bad at all, and all that was left for her was to get some real experiences. Maylee asked if there were names for the moves, to which Roland said that it wasn't needed, but that she was free to name them if she wanted. Layla told them that it was lunchtime, giving Maylee an opportunity to strike, as she yelled out one of her attacks, but the fact that he had shouted it was the main reason why he was able to block her so easily, making her pout and throw the branch in frustration. The girl ran to Layla for comfort, but Layla agreed with Roland, and said that it was not a game and he wouldn't lose to some kids anyway, causing Maylee to get upset once again. It had been a few days since the assassin incident, and there had been no movement since then, but Roland didn't think it would end just like that. As they ate, Layla asked Roland why he was teaching her assassin moves, instead of swordsmanship or martial arts if he wanted her to become an adventurer. But he admitted that he didn't want her to have a naive way of thinking that other adventurers had, by thinking that they could fail because there would always be a next time. Layla praised the girl for improving a lot compared to the last time she saw her training, and the girl said that it was all because of Roland's help and advice. The woman hummed in thought, and asked if it was time for the girl to already be competent as an adventurer by now, and Roland asked Maylee if she wanted to be one, to which she responded without hesitation. They went to the guild and Melia saw them, confused about why he was there on his day off. He explained that he was there to register Maylee as an adventurer, even despite how young she was. Melia went off to get the form for the girl to write on, before explaining that the test would include a magic power measurement and a practical test. The practical test would be first, but it was unfortunately examined by Morley. This was a disappointment for many reasons, not that Maylee would lose, just the fact that it was with Morley. They walked off toward the battle area, as he confidently said that it was his job to teach children to stop dreaming, but everyone was already ready to laugh at him. Roland gave the girl a sheathed dagger to fight with, as he told her to do what they had been doing at their training, and Maylee and Morley stood opposed from each other, ready for battle. Melia started the test, and Morley immediately charged forward to swing a heavy attack with the wooden sword, claiming that victory goes to whoever makes the first move. But Maylee was easily able to swiftly dodge it and hit Morley in the rear. She did this many upon many times, and Morley would eventually beg for the child to stop. But that meant she had passed the practical test, despite there still being room for growth in her magic due to her being so young. In the end, she passed the adventurer's test as a whole, and the three were going to have a feast as a celebration. Layla fixed up the girl at home, but this action seemed to make Maylee remember something. A flash going through her mind, but she decided to dismiss it for now. The girl ran into the guild while begging Roland for a quest, but he had to explain to her once again that there was no combat quest in the F rank, so she would have to do the easier ones for now. Suddenly, knights barged through the door and tried to take her away, but Layla and Roland refused to give the girl up to the knights, causing them to decide that it was time to use violence against them. Roland walked out with a sigh and punched one of the knights in the face, sending him to the ground as everyone in the building stared with judgment. Suddenly, the man whom the knights worked under, Baladel the feudal lord, walked in and asked for the girl, calling her Alias. Layla refused, and Baladel noticed her beauty, trying to ask for Layla to come with him as well, but she slapped the old man away as Roland was the only man who could touch her. Baladel didn't seem to recognize Roland until he took off his glasses and asked how his brother was doing, saying that if Baladel turned back, Roland would forgive him and not tell anyone the dirty tricks he used to succeed the throne. Baladel was suddenly cooperative and started to apologize for his actions and what the knights did, and Roland felt satisfied with this. But he still wanted the old man to tell him everything he knew about the girl. After learning what he could do, Baladel was eventually permitted to leave, since Roland couldn't do much asking of the nobles since that was not a normal thing to do, and he bid goodbye to Baladel and the knights. Roland walked back into the guild with everyone's eyes on him, wondering who he was for making the feudal lord kneel on the ground. He told Meili that everything was going to be okay, making her remember another thing that she quickly dismissed, before saying that she was going to take the quest that he picked. Night came around and Meili was already asleep, and Roland was quick to tell Layla that Meili was actually a princess from the Badenhark kingdom that had already fallen and seemed to have lost her memories. Layla did not seem happy to hear this, and Roland opened his arms to give Layla a hug, as she asked if there was anyone waiting for Meili. But Roland didn't know, and said that he might have to leave to ask King Randolph about it later. Meili lied in bed, and wondered when her memories had returned, thinking back on all the times she had interacted with Roland and Layla, and many other things she had done after being enslaved. She remembered a large mansion being her home, while she had kind parents and 3 siblings. However, something had happened and all of that was taken away from Meili. After that, Meili didn't understand anything and it all seemed to go dark. At least, that was until she met Roland in the alleyway. It was now back in the present, as Meili got out of her bed and walked over to the bedroom of Roland and Layla to ask if she could sleep in there for the night. Meili got into bed and hugged the dark-haired man, until Layla popped her head out of the covers with a frustrated pout, since Meila's presence ruined her plan to do things with Roland, and now she wouldn't get a chance before he would be away for a while. Meili noticed that Layla had no clothes on and asked if she wasn't cold, to which Layla said that it was fine since she was in bed, and told the girl to get in between them to give Roland some space to sleep. The girl asked where Roland was going, and he said that he was going to leave for 2 days for work stuff, while Meili would stay with Layla. This information causing the girl to hug Roland with a sad expression. Layla joined in and hugged the both of them, and they all slept in the warm embrace. The next day, Meili told Layla that she was going to the guild, and would catch up with her when she was done. And Layla continued to work around the house and wonder what Roland was doing. Roland, in fact, was in King Randolph's bedroom at the moment, attempting to slap the old man awake, which worked, but also scared him greatly. The old man had to be reassured that he wasn't being killed, before Roland explained that he had a favor to ask, which was hard to do without Randolph's help, and the matter was about the Princess of Badenhark. Roland wanted to know if there were any survivors of the kingdom, and King Randolph said that Meili's mother was alive, but there was no official information about the rest of the family. With this information, Roland wanted Randolph to tell Meili's mother about the situation, and promptly made his leave to return back home. He came back before Meili was back from the guild, and Layla told Roland about how everyone was talking about the girl a lot, and how she was a promising newbie to them. The conversation was interrupted by Roland saying that Meili's mother was alive, and would be picking the girl up in 2 days, seemingly making Layla look away with a sad smile. Roland noticed the change and stared with silence, as Layla tried to be positive about it and said that there was no way she was going to be sad since Meili would be reunited with her family. Because of the fact that they only had 2 more days with the girl, they were going to make them the greatest 2 days that Meili had ever spent, and try to make many more memories with the girl before that certain day would eventually come. Layla fixed the girl's appearance once again, and the carriage pulled up as they all walked out hand in hand to walk up to Meili's mother. Or rather, Alias's mother. All the memories seemed to rush back to the girl as the 2 warmly embraced with tears, and the girl's mother thanked the 2 for their care. Her mother would not forget this debt, and she told her daughter to take her time in saying her farewells to the 2, to which the girl walked up to Roland and Layla to tell them that she was glad to have met them, and learned so much from them. Layla told the girl that this was not going to be their last farewell, and she could always visit them whenever she desired. The girl agreed and said that she would also write letters, but the girl also seemed to mention that she was going to be Roland's wife someday in the future, to which Roland just responded that he understood, making Layla confused and jealous from the answer he gave. With that, the girl gave one last tearful smile to the 2, and said once again that she was happy to have met them, before going off with her mother, as Roland and Layla had the same feeling as well. Roland visited King Rudolph once again, and slapped him in the face to wake the old man up once more. He jumped awake with a scream as his wide eyes stared at the dark-haired male in shock, confused on why Roland was still coming, and wondering if Roland was going to kill him for real that time. Roland quickly corrected the old man and said that he was there to thank Rudolph for the other day and to repay his debt. The king tried to wave it off and say that there was no need since Roland had already helped a lot before when he was an assassin. But Roland insisted that he should repay it, since it had nothing to do with his past and he owed the king a favor as a normal person. Rudolph hummed and thought for a moment before eventually stumbling upon something in mind for Roland to do and make even with, and it was about his daughter, the first princess and the hero Almeria. Roland wondered if there was something wrong with the girl, and there was, because after defeating and subjugating the Demon King, she has been feeling down, and her personal maid asked her what was wrong. The maid had learned that Almeria was feeling down because her loved one had suddenly disappeared, even though they had supposedly made a promise to love together after the subjugation. Roland nodded, seeming as though he was understanding the situation, and asked if he just had to find that person. But Rudolph was annoyed by how dense Roland was, since he said that Almeria was talking about Roland himself, and just told him to cheer the girl up. Roland made his way back to the city while wondering what he was going to do, since even if he was told it was said, Roland knew that he never made that promise with Almeria. Not only that, dating royalty was not something that normal people did anyway, but he had to pay his debt. When he finally arrived home, he explained the whole situation to Layla, who remembered who Almeria was, proceeding to call Roland troublesome for the situations that he gets himself into. But Roland had no memory of making such a promise to the girl. Despite what actually happened, from Almeria's perspective, it seemed as though Roland had disappeared, and she had been feeling down because of that ever since. Layla seemed to have already gotten an idea on how to fix the situation, and gave the suggestion that Roland could just make Almeria think that he had died, since if it was sadness for a departed one, time would heal the wound eventually, instead of having to despair over the whereabouts for a person forever. Roland's eyes widened as he thought that idea was brilliant, asking the woman if she had any plans, to which Layla said that there was an illusion magic on the 7th rank called Real Nightmare, piquing Roland's interest as he got up out of his chair. She asked if he wanted to learn it, and he confirmed without hesitation, watching as Layla proceeded to teach him the magic, and as expected, he learned it extremely quickly, which made Layla a little upset, as she felt as though it hurt her pride as a demon lord. While she was distracted, Roland raised his hand and held it near Layla's face while testing out the Real Nightmare magic, and making her believe that she was a dog and he was her owner. Suddenly, Layla was a whole other person and charged at Roland while barking happily and trying to tackle him. But he was able to dodge out of the way swiftly, which only made her upset and pouty. He was able to figure out that it was not only just an illusion, but one combined with hypnosis. But Roland's thoughts were interrupted when Layla started to kiss and lick his face like a dog while barking, making Roland believe that it was probably time to turn her back. With a simple clap of his hands, she snapped out of the trance and realized what she had done, becoming flustered and starting to complain at Roland for what he had done to her. Roland turned around and was about to leave the palace again since he didn't have time for small talk, only making Layla offended since she thought that he meant her words were not worth hearing. But Roland just kissed her to shut her up and told her that he would reward her if she was good while he was gone, to which she told him to not take too long, as he left the house. It was another normal day at Roland's normal job, and many adventurers flooded the guild, asking to do quests and giving a lot of work for the employees to do. Layla was there in her cat form, pawing at the papers, while Melia would walk up to Roland and give him some papers to deal with, to which he would take without hesitation. As he grabbed the papers, the girl leaned a little closer to take a closer look at Roland. Before mentioning that she had noticed him seeming out of it lately, she asked if it was because Meili went home, causing the eyes of both Roland and Layla to widen in shock from the question. He thought about it for a moment and didn't know how to explain it, yet said that there was a strange feeling of a hole in his heart, and Melia said that feeling was called loneliness. The girl chuckled and told Roland it was nice to see how much he cared about his relatives, telling him to continue taking care of the documents as she started to walk away. However, someone suddenly barged through the front doors of the guild, causing Melia to become confused and wonder who it could be, as Roland started to get a bad feeling about what was about to occur. The door slammed open as someone confidently walked into the building, while Roland's head whipped over and his eyes widened at the sight of a familiar person standing in the middle of the guild with a determined and fulfilled expression. Almeria, clad in her familiar armor, apologized for the ruckus, while everyone else in the building was either surprised and excited to see the princess and hero in the building, or was confused about her identity and just thought that she was another adventurer. Almeria walked up to the front desk while telling Melia that she was at the guild since she heard that there was a staff member who went by Roland's name. But Melia was struggling to answer Almeria, as Roland himself held papers over the side of his face to try and obscure it from Almeria's view. Unfortunately, Almeria took a closer look and already recognized Roland, even if he did try to say that she had the wrong person. But she could clearly see through his disguise, which was just glasses. Roland stayed silent for a moment, still holding the paper over his mouth before asking what business Almeria had, as she said that she was there to try to become an adventurer. He immediately told her that they were no longer taking applications, causing Almeria to become confused and upset, since she thought that everyone should be able to become an adventurer. and tried to turn toward Amelia for help in the situation, only to overwhelm the girl even more. As this happened, Roland wondered why Almeria was there at the guild, and thought that maybe the spell failed. When Roland went to the palace, Almeria was crying in her bed with her face planted in her pillows and sheets while sniffling. She heard a sound and whipped her body around, asking who it was, until she saw Roland walk through the opaque curtains of her bedroom window. Her tears paused for a moment as she stared with confusion and shock when recognizing Roland, until the dark-haired male walked up to her and used Real Nightmare on the girl. He told her that he had died after the battle with the Demon Lord, and on his way back, bled out from a wound he got. Roland took a step back and tried to see the effects that the spell would have, and saw the girl start to tear up once again, crying in confusion. Whether or not she was talking directly to him or to herself, Almeria said that she loved him, and that he promised to stay by her side and would kiss her after the battle was over, continuing to chant that he promised her. Roland seemed to remember that he did promise something like that, and decided that he was going to keep his promise, proceeding to give Almeria a sweet and short kiss, before he swiftly made his leave while praying for her well-being. Yet it seemed as though that wasn't going to be the last of when he would see her. Roland wondered if someone lifted the spell and made a troubled face about the situation, while Almeria would beg for Amelia to hurry up and give her an application to become an adventurer. But Roland refused to do so, since she was a princess and already a hero, telling her that it wasn't a time to play around. The girl said that it was fine and pouted, wondering what was with his attitude after what he did to her. All the other employees were confused and chatted with each other, gossiping about how Almeria and Roland knew each other and started to wonder who Roland really was. Almeria changed her expression into a happier one as she wondered if Roland was embarrassed. But Roland tried to insist that he didn't have any idea about what she was talking about and asked her if she told her father about her visit. This only caused the night girl to get upset again, since she didn't want to bring her father into the situation, and everyone else in the guild wondered if the two were actually together. Almeria grumbled and complained about how she should be allowed to be an adventurer, also wondering why Roland was wearing glasses, before getting all shy again and saying that the glasses looked good on him. She ordered him to ask his higher-ups to make her an adventurer, to which he refused. But another employee walked up to him and said that it would probably be best to follow what she said, or else their heads could be on the line. With some reluctance, Roland listened and went with Almeria to see the branch director, Iris. Almeria confidently told the woman that she wanted to become an adventurer, asking if it was okay, to which Iris said that it was fine and was about to say something else until she was interrupted by Almeria. The night girl asked for the name of Iris and said she would remember it, but Roland jumped into the conversation and, with a glare, told the girl to stop talking to his boss with such arrogance. Almeria apologized and seemed meek when introducing herself to Iris, before telling Roland that his boss agreed, making Roland sigh before saying that Almeria was going to be tested on her abilities with Roland as the examiner. This meant that she was going to have to fight him, but Almeria said that it was impossible and that there was no way for her to win against Roland. Yet she still didn't want to find another guild to join. Roland asked why she was so fixated on joining this specific guild, until she admitted that it was all an excuse to see him. They finally went out into the city streets and prepared for the battle, as Almeria and Roland stood opposed from each other, the girl holding out her blade and announcing that she was going to fight seriously and make him acknowledge her. Roland told her to try her best, and wondered if she had what it took to stand before him, beginning to glare at her and procuring a heavy aura that Almeria immediately felt. She suddenly jumped back in surprise, holding her sword up in a defensive stance as Layla watched, and thought that she had a good sense of danger. However, it was unfortunate that just the pressure of Roland's killing intent alone was enough to paralyze her. Almeria was sweating and kept backing away from the approaching man, before Roland glared at her even harder, causing the girl to fall to the floor in fear, which meant the end of the battle. She panted heavily, while in disbelief about how she thought that she had gotten stronger, disappointed that she could only endure the killing intent for 5 seconds. However, Roland praised her and said that he did think that she had gotten stronger. Roland said that back then, she would faint whenever she was hit by his killing intent, and she would wet herself whenever it would happen, causing the girl to become flustered and try to insist that it was just sweat. Either way, Roland said that it was his victory, and said she wasn't qualified, making Almeria groan in frustration and complain to the male, before running away while saying that she would be back. He sighed and told her to do whatever she wanted, seemingly making her smile at the response as she rode away on her horse. The crowd was in a commotion as everyone went on with the rest of their days, Roland apologizing for all the trouble. Melia asked what his relationship with the princess was, and he answered honestly that they used to travel together on their quest to defeat the Demon Lord. The girl only took this as a joke and laughed, before Roland decided that he would say that he was just a tutor to Almeria, somehow seeming to make sense to Melia, along with giving a reason as to why he wears glasses. She walked away with a confident expression, while all the other employees believed his words as well. making Roland realize that he had just gotten himself a strange title. It was another day with Roland at his job, and an employee walked up to him and said that he could take over the front desk since he was good at handling people's squabbles. Roland asked for the next person to walk up to the desk, and a young boy walked up and timidly asked for a quest, before asking for confirmation of Roland's identity. This adventurer wanted to make sure, since Nil, along with other adventurers, had told him good things about Roland, and how any quest that Roland would recommend would never go awry. But Roland said that he shouldn't trust everything he heard. The boy asked Roland to give him a quest that suited his abilities, to which the dark-haired male walked off and brought a simple F-rank quest for the adventurer. He looked at it and believed that he could handle it, yet he couldn't help but worry about it since he couldn't afford to get injured. But Roland reassured him and said that it was normal to worry about things like that. Eventually, a girl walked up to the desk and asked for a hard quest, to which Roland found one where there were 2 already applied F-ranked adventurers with room for 1 more person, in order for the quest requirements to be met. He brought it to the girl, who accepted it without hesitation, and Roland went off to process it and gather the rest of the party members. By afternoon, the group gathered with adventurers by the name of Atro, a spear user, Uno, a sword user, and the girl from earlier, Everly. They all looked at each other with worried expressions and told Roland that they all did not believe they were really strong enough to clear the quest. Hearing this, Roland told them that they should go somewhere else and left the front desk job to Melia for a while everyone walked outside. He explained to them that he was going to train the group for a bit, since they had all applied for quests that were too difficult for them. They all got upset and offended, trying to say that they could manage somehow if they worked together. But Roland responded by summoning little shadow entities that proceeded to beat up the 2 men and steal the underwear of the girl. Roland laughed at them and called them insects, saying that they were weaker than the shadows who he summoned to already be weak. The girl said that her skirt got flipped, and Roland said that she should be grateful that was all that happened, since women usually go through a lot worse when dealing with bad people. They needed to figure out what they could and couldn't do, and Roland made them say that they were weaker than insects, since it would keep them humble and make them have self-awareness that would turn into strength. And from now on, they would begin training by fighting the shadows. Each one of the members would slowly learn their own tips suited to their abilities, while learning how to fight against the shadows and get stronger, before eventually getting ready for the quest that they had applied for. They seemed to be different people, as the man who made the request asked for the group to take care of him, to which they confidently said that they would do their best. Back at the guild, Roland made his way back to the front desk, and saw someone begging the worker to give him 1 more chance, since he really wanted to become an adventurer. The worker told him to leave, since the guild was about to close, and he apologized, doing as told, as Melia explained to Roland that the boy had been asking about the same thing since the previous day. However, there were rules about waiting 6 months before reapplying. She also said that the boy's skill was odd, and that he didn't seem to know how to use it, but she wanted to change the subject and ask if Roland was free for the day. Unfortunately, he turned her down since he supposedly still had things to do, and those things happened to be going outside the guild and checking up on the boy. He explained that he needed to become an adventurer since he wanted to be able to help his mother, but he said that he wasn't strong enough even though it was his dream after seeing Almeria fight. Roland asked the boy to show his skill, and the boy showed that it was a skill called Penetrate, using his sword to stretch out his attack farther than normal. Roland thought about it for a moment, before suggesting that the boy should use the same skill but with a shovel, and once he did, he felt ashamed that his skill was only useful for things such as digging. However, Roland explained that it was important and very useful, since it would help make safety zones and such, giving confidence to the boy again, as Roland told him that he could just take the test at another guild. Roland was originally going to teach the boy how to handle a spear, but seeing him run off happily made Roland know that it would be enough for now. Later, another adventurer walked up and rudely sat on the desk, asking for a good quest, as Roland suggested that he could collect herbs or carry luggage. The man got angry and started to yell at Roland, until Nil walked in and smacked the man, telling him not to bother Roland or sit on the counter. Nil apologized to Roland for the man's behavior, until the man realized that Roland was the man that Nil was always talking about, switching to adoring Roland. But that only seemed to make Nil angry again and try to discipline the man. Making the man bow again, Nil asked Roland to tell them about the quest, as the dark-haired male sighed about how troublesome the situation was. Roland kept helping adventurers at the desk, causing Melia to praise him, but Morley jumped in and said that it was not that big of a deal. Melia tried to say that, in fact, it was a big deal, since Roland had been working for less time yet was a great worker. Morley tried to say that he was more popular, but Melia knew that he was only popular with people that he was close with, causing the both of them to glare at each other and tell one another to just get their work done. Another employee told Roland to take a break, and he walked off until he stumbled upon a shadow that let him know that things worked out for the group he trained. Iris walked up to him and wanted to hear what happened with Almeria and Baladel. to which Roland explained everything honestly, causing Iris to feel disappointed that she couldn't reprimand him. She called him an ally of justice, before telling him one last thing before he would leave, saying that there was a group of adventurers who were recently getting stronger. He just said that he gave them advice to prevent any disasters from happening, as Iris hummed and thought from the response, before telling the male that he was helping nobodies become outstanding adventurers. Iris tried to ask Roland out for dinner once again. However, he quickly said that he had a cat to take care of, to which Iris tried to insist that it was about work. He said that work stuff could be talked about at work, but before he could leave, she shouted that she had an offer, wanting him to become a full-time examiner for the adventurer's test, which piqued his interest. Roland was making his way through the city as he always did, clad in his work uniform, until he eventually stumbled upon Melia getting his attention and running up to him. She panted and tried to catch her breath, because he seemed to walk fast, but he was more focused on why she was even there, asking if she needed something from him. Melia looked up with a bright smile and held up a bag while pulling out a wrapped-up bottle from it, saying that she wanted to celebrate his promotion to a full-time test examiner. Roland was about to say that he was busy, until Melia said that when there are happy events, people should celebrate, since it was the normal thing to do. The dark-haired male was taken aback and changed his attitude, immediately agreeing to Melia's offer, which made the girl jump with joy. Yet, she sweat-dropped when she realized and felt as though Roland would do anything if she said it was a normal thing to do. They both walked through the city together while making conversation, while Melia said that all of the staff were surprised when they heard about it, since Roland had only been working at the guild for 2 months. But she was excited to see him be the guild's first full-time test examiner, especially since everyone agreed to it. Well, most everyone. Roland remembered one person who definitely did not agree to it, but Melia told him that he didn't have to count Morley in it, since it would be weird to disagree with the decision after seeing the branch director's reports about him. Melia was also touched by Roland's concern for the young boy from earlier, and she also felt the changes in the adventurers' attitudes towards quests recently. Nil had also changed a lot, and despite staying F rank for quite a long time, quickly rose to C rank. Roland tried to insist that the adventurers were changing all because of their own efforts, and it had nothing to do with him. But Melia said that Iris said differently, along with saying that Roland's sincerity resonated with people's hearts, making the man stare blankly as Melia tried to convince him that there was something special about him. He asked the girl why she seemed so happy, since it was as if she was the one being praised, to which she laughed and said that was the case, since she was his superior, and him being praised meant she was being praised in some way. As they continued walking, Roland asked what she meant by everyone when Melia was talking about the celebration, to which she explained that the branch manager would be coming as well and they were going to celebrate in his house. Without doubting it, Roland thought that it must have been normal to celebrate in the home of the person being celebrated. And as they walked up to the house, the two of them could see Iris standing awkwardly outside of the building in a fancy dress, also holding a wrapped-up bottle and fidgeting in place in anticipation. She noticed the two and greeted them before giving the bottle to Roland, but Melia was more focused on the fact that Iris was all dolled up for some reason. Iris insisted that it was normal for her, to which Roland believed, even if Melia said that she knew that she was giving her best. Due to all the noise, Layla walked outside to see what was going on and greeted Roland happily, saying that it was rare for him to come home with guests. Melia greeted the woman back and Iris introduced herself as the branch director of the guild, but Layla already knew who she was, making Iris confused. Layla turned toward Roland and casually asked if the two women were there to all collectively have fun with him, causing Iris and Melia to flinch in shock and confusion, until Roland said no and placed down the wrapped-up bottles. The sight of the bottles made Layla realize they were holding a banquet, and confidently laughed, before Melia asked to borrow the kitchen and apron, confusing the woman as she asked if Melia wanted to set foot in her castle, and teased her for her bravery. Melia groaned and asked Layla to just tell her what she could and couldn't use, walking off with Layla to the kitchen as Iris watched, while saying that the two seemed to get along well. In the meantime, Roland and Iris would set up the table, while they would wait for the food, and Melia opened the pot with a surprised expression, asking the demon girl what was in the pot before having a taste. Melia groaned in annoyance from how good it tasted, but still tried to say that there was something wrong with it and that it needed to be better, causing both women to start arguing with each other. But Melia tried to push Layla away and tell her to go away for a while. Layla pouted in frustration before glancing over to see Roland and Iris, proceeding to walk up and hug Roland's arm while introducing herself to the branch director. They all decided that they would start the celebration early, since Melia would take a while to prepare the food, and the three sat at the table together. Iris asked Layla what her relationship was with Roland, since she was curious after hearing that they had met each other while on the journey, and Layla casually said that she was like a spouse to the man, causing Iris to gasp in shock from the response. Layla told Iris that there was no need to panic, since she claimed to understand that women sought out strong people, and said that as long as Roland returned to her in the end, she would be satisfied. Roland asked if she drank too much, making Layla laugh in embarrassment, as Iris hummed and thought and finally got an answer as to why Roland refused her invitation to dinner. Melia finally finished preparing the dinner and asked Layla what she was boasting about while she was gone, but Layla said that Melia should just bow down to her. The girl groaned once again and turned to Roland, trying to convince him that her cooking was better, and that he should choose her instead of Layla. After getting basically rejected again, Melia growled and started to chug a glass of the drinks she brought, while Layla told the girl that she was not the star that day. Everyone proceeded to have their celebratory banquet and ate the delicious food and drinks, which made Melia and Layla get stuffed and pass out in bed, leaving Roland and Iris as the only people awake now. Iris asked if Roland could still go on, but he didn't answer the question, and just walked up to the woman and put a hand over her drink. They both stared into each other's eyes in silence, before Iris eventually leaned in for a kiss, quickly pulling away before connected when she realized that Roland was not against it and called him a bad man. Roland didn't disagree since he used to do a bad job in the past, and Iris asked if he was also good at winning women's hearts, to which Roland confirmed that he could if necessary, as Iris proceeded to crawl on top of the dark-haired male. The next day after everyone had left, Roland was getting ready for work, and saw that Layla had somehow seemingly gotten sick. He already prepared a meal and told her to eat it when she felt like it, and Layla tried to speak, attempting to explain what could have caused her condition, but she quickly dismissed it and just asked for a kiss. Roland accepted without hesitation and kissed her before leaving for work, to which Layla learned and was surprised that Layla could even get sick. She wondered if it was okay for him to work at this time, confusing Roland, until the girl asked if he took Layla to the doctor. Roland said that he didn't, causing Melia to tell the man that he should leave early since people get vulnerable when they're sick, and feel more lonely when they're vulnerable. Melia admitted that she would whine for a year if nobody took care of her when she got sick, and she went off to pass the message to the branch director, saying that she would make dinner after work while Roland would bring Layla to the doctor and be there for her. The dark-haired male quickly left and walked through the city, while wondering what he was going to do since he didn't think a human doctor would be able to examine a demon. But when he was about to enter the house, he saw that the door was already opened. This made him suspicious and he walked into the silent house with his guard up, slowly walking into the bedroom, only to find Layla not in bed whatsoever. Her original clothes were still on the bed, while her other dress that she often wore was gone, meaning that she changed her clothes recently. Roland felt the bed and noticed that it was still warm, so Layla couldn't be far, and it was unlikely that she went out for grocery shopping since he would have seen her on the way back. He noticed remnants of magic power on the bed, making Roland wonder if the survivors of the Demon Lord's army had finally noticed that she was alive, or if Layla had regained her power. But he decided that it was likely the former, since he would notice a powerful force such as Layla's right away, meaning that she was still wearing the collar. The magic energy seemed to direct south, and Roland followed it, taking off his glasses as he noticed that it was either going to the Badenhark Kingdom or the Jorovensen Kingdom. It went through the city and into a dense forest, stopping in a certain area as Roland looked up and took a second to sense the source and quickly found it. Roland walked over to the spot he sensed and told the person to come out, which caused a dark elf woman to walk out and smirk, saying that she was wondering who had been following her, only to find out that it was a human. Roland wasn't alarmed by the news of her species and just sighed, being able to confirm that it was just a dark elf, which offended the woman. He told the dark elf that Layla better be okay and that she should give her back to him, but she seemed reluctant to talk to him. The dark elf, however, did want to thank him for hiding Layla, but Roland just replied casually that it was no problem, causing the dark elf woman to be upset again and try to attack the male. He swiftly dodged all of the attacks while he told her to watch her back, making her laugh and say that she would not be fooled by such a tactic from a human. But it was true that there was something behind her, as Roland had summoned little shadow people to attack the woman. She was shocked and confused as to how a human could use a 4th rank magic, but he explained that Layla taught him, and called the dark elf worse than a human, making her even more angry until Roland summoned way more shadows. The dark elf said that the maximum should only be 6, and wondered if the shadows had self-consciousness with the way they moved, but Roland just said that he was controlling all of them. The woman slammed her blade into the ground in anger, causing the shadows to run away in fear, but she was unable to see Roland walk up to her and simply flick her forehead, causing her to be sent flying into a tree. Roland looked over and found Layla, but the dark elf woman was about to wake up again, so Roland decided to use some magic on her to prevent her from interfering. After doing so, Roland walked over to Layla and dispelled the magic that was placed on her, making her slowly wake up and confusedly ask why Roland was there. She explained that her subordinate was asking her for a favor, and said it would be faster to have her explain, wondering where the girl, Rosie, had went. since she was supposedly carrying her while she was under the sleep magic. Roland called Rosie over, and Layla noticed that the dark elf woman was under the real nightmare magic and was acting like a dog. Layla found it amusing, but Rosie was still her subordinate and wanted Roland to lift the magic, to which he did. Rosie was confused as to why she was acting like a dog, and Roland asked if she had any fun. But Rosie became upset by his words again and pulled out her weapons, until Layla told her to stop, as she was not going to let anyone lay a hand on her spouse. The dark elf woman was confused, as she didn't know the word spouse. So Layla said that she should not treat the man lightly. Layla said that she couldn't last 30 minutes against him, and said that she surrendered after only 10, making Rosie shocked by how the time was getting shorter. Suddenly, Roland jumped in and said that Layla didn't even last 5 minutes in their first night, making Layla flustered and lightly smack him, while telling him not to mention that in front of her subordinate. Layla explained to Rosie that she had acknowledged Roland and vowed to devote herself to him, but Rosie still didn't feel like she could acknowledge Roland herself. Getting back on topic though, Roland asked Rosie why she tried to take Layla away, and with a nod from Layla, Rosie started to explain. Rosie had found Layla's corpse and immediately knew that it was a fake since it didn't have a birthmark on her rear, and Layla laughed and said that she didn't have such a thing, but both Rosie and even Roland agreed that yeah, there was one. Rosie continued on and said that after months passed, some of the demon army suggested that they should attack the humans again, as revenge for the loss of the demon lord. She wanted to let everyone know that Layla was actually still alive to attempt and make the radicals lose their cause, since Rosie even believed that retreating was a wise decision. The current person who was going to start and lead the invasion was someone named Corneliu Vazri, a name that Layla seemed to recognize. The humans may have thought the war was over, but for the demons, it was far from it. Originally, the demons lived on a separate continent called Makai, but one day invaded the humans after using transfer magic. The demons continued to try and take over as much land as they could, until the Seven Kings formed a coalition force to fend off the main forces, while a special heroes party would infiltrate the castle and defeat the demon lord. However, many of the demons still lurked around the perimeter of the castle, which was why part of the coalition force still guarded the area. Roland told Layla that there was a chance that she would not be able to stop them, which she knew, but she still wanted to believe that they would listen to her words as the demon lord. She said that the war the demons started was a mistake, and Layla wanted to atone for her sins as her last responsibility as the demon lord, and Roland said that he was going to do whatever he could to help her. Layla was confused, since she didn't want the humans to know that he didn't kill her, but Roland insisted that he did. He killed the demon lord, but he didn't want anyone to still kill her as Layla without dealing with him first. The demon girl teared up and hugged Roland as Rosie felt touched by the scene, before the three of them walked through the forest toward a gate that she had installed near a hut. It used transfer magic that should lead them to the place where Rosie explained there were likely more than 2,000 individuals, including monsters, which would be too much for the security forces around the castle. They were almost at the hut, but once they arrived, they found out that the gate had been destroyed. Suddenly, a voice rang out in the air, as everyone turned around to see a small individual sitting on the edge of a hill nearby, and asking Rosie what she was doing there with a human. The unfamiliar person was called by the name of Delacruz, and Layla walked up to call out to the smaller person, saying that it was her and that she wanted to talk to Corneliu. Delacruz gritted her teeth and told Layla to shut up, saying that even if Layla was really alive, it didn't matter anymore. The small demon used magic to transform into a dragon, and started to prepare a breath attack as Roland asked Rosie if she could guard against the breath attack, to which she said that she could if it was only once. The dark-haired male said that was good enough, and asked for the dark elf to take care of the useless woman, meaning Layla, which offended both women, even if it wasn't wrong in that situation. Rosie proceeded to use her magic to create a shield around her and Layla, while bragging about how he probably wouldn't be able to do something against Delacruz, but when she opened her eyes, Roland was already gone. The dragon let out its attack, and the two women were able to survive, as Rosie wondered where Roland was and wondered if he ran away. But Roland immediately appeared at the hand of Delacruz. The beast was shocked and tried to send a breath attack toward Roland, until he summoned a small spark of fire, charging toward the dragon who leaned back. But it was not enough, since Roland was still able to land multiple hits on Delacruz. The small demon was forced out of his dragon form and fell to the ground unconscious, while Rosie felt angry that he was able to defeat Delacruz without a sweat. Either way, the three of them now needed a new way to be brought to the isolated island, and Layla figured out an idea and asked if Roland could learn the magic, to which he said that he could if it wasn't as complicated as Shadow. One teaching session later, Roland was able to cast the gate magic easily, which left the dark elf with her head hung low as she wondered what was with the human. She started to dramatically tear up about how she trained so hard to learn the spell, and Layla tried to reassure her that Roland was just a man who was more talented than the demon race, being able to slightly comfort the dark elf woman. It was time to go, and all three of them held hands together as Roland said the chant, and teleported them to their destination, making Roland receive praise from Layla. They finally reached a close distance to the place where the meeting was being held, and Rosie told Roland to not do anything rash, but he asked if he should just kill all of the demons, since there were only around 2,000 of them, to which Rosie laughed and said that he could try if he could. Layla told the dark elf to stop, since Roland was not joking, but that only made Rosie confused. They were going to move after a short break, and Layla told the dark-haired male that she wanted to talk to them first, before he would try killing anyone, since she didn't want anyone else to die if possible. After a short amount of time, it was time to move, but Rosie soon noticed that there were no guards at the tower that they were supposed to pass through. When they got close, they could hear roars and cheering, causing the dark elf woman to realize that it was already the day of the action, something that they had not told her. Roland explained that it was likely that the dragon was just to keep watch on her, since they likely never trusted her, but she wanted to still believe that they could make it, especially since they had a doctor to check Layla's condition. The three of them climbed up and saw the huge numbers of the army that was gathered, but Layla still tried to confidently stand up and get everyone's attention, trying to tell everyone that she was indeed alive. Rosie tried to back her up and everyone started to cheer, as Layla apologized and said that they should stop the revenge and return to Makai, confusing all of the demons as they didn't believe that the real Layla would say such a thing. None of the demons could feel any magic power coming from Layla due to her collar, and started to doubt that she was the real Layla, making all of the demons go back to cheering in excitement and bloodlust for the revenge they were about to have against the humans. Roland and Layla both realized that the army was going toward the area where Maylee lived, meaning that she would be in danger, and Layla tried to get their attention once again, but no one gave a glance in her direction. Layla fell to the ground in defeat, still trying to get anyone to listen to her, but her cries were drowned out by the cheers of the army. The demons of the army roared with cheers while Layla and Rosie watched, Roland listening in as he hid behind a rock. Rosie was trying to comfort the demon woman until Layla felt as though she had had enough, and stood up with an angry expression, yelling at everyone to not underestimate her. She claimed that it wasn't that she didn't have magical power, but rather that she no longer needed it, because she had learned the strongest skill in the world: instant death. Corneliu laughed and said that she was bluffing, but she only responded by telling him to go back to the demon world, saying that it was her last warning. He continued, confidently telling the other demons to ignore her, as they were going to rebuild the Demon Lord's army and conquer the countries of humans. Layla called him a fool, and said that he was always like he was now, which was also the reason why he was reliable back then. But she raised her hand and Roland got ready to summon an attack for her to hit Corneliu, stabbing through him within seconds as a tear fell down Layla's face. Corneliu started to cry as well, weakly calling out to Layla as he finally recognized her as not a fake, before he died, with all the demons in the army crying out due to his death. They were all confused as to what happened, and how Corneliu's sword pierced its owner. But with enough muttering and thinking, the demons started to believe that Layla was in fact their previous ruler, all because of that spell that Roland secretly helped her with. They were all confused as to what happened and how Corneliu's sword pierced its owner. But with enough muttering and thinking, the demons started to believe that Layla was in fact their previous ruler, all because of that spell that Roland secretly helped with. Layla stood at the edge of the cliff and ordered everyone to obey her or else they would meet the same fate as Corneliu. Everyone followed without any hesitation or complaint, and with time, everyone would be taken back to the demon world through a gate that Rosie made. Layla was talking to Roland, and she asked how he knew what she was thinking, but he just casually said that it was obvious, since he was the only one who could do that kind of feat. She chuckled and said that he did a good job with replacing her skill, but that was not the topic to prioritize, as Roland remembered that the army should have a doctor, and wondered if they were also going to go back. Layla assured him that the doctors would be standing by in the barracks for the time being. Despite his blank expression, he still worried for the health of Layla, causing her to try and tease him, but that didn't affect him much. He told the woman that they should go and get her checked up, but she suddenly let go of Roland and said that she needed to go by herself, confusing him as Layla walked away. Roland stared off into the distance as Rosie walked up and caught the dark-haired male's attention, asking where Layla went, to which Roland explained that she had just gone to the doctor, and that she likely didn't want anyone else to see her. Rosie laughed and said that she wouldn't want to be lumped in with the likes of him, since Layla supposedly had a high level of trust in the dark elf woman compared to Roland. Rosie kept boasting about herself and asked if he wanted to hear about the story and memories of her and Layla, but he was extremely uninterested, even though she continued on without hesitation. After a while, Rosie was finished with her story, and the number of demons walking through the gate was starting to get lower. meaning it would only be a little time until everyone would have retreated. Rosie was still amazed by the power of Layla, believing that the skill used earlier was of Layla's own power, which made Rosie tell Roland that he should be careful, as he should not put Layla in a bad mood. She also mentioned that he would likely be killed anyway since he was no longer of any use to her. But Roland gave a look of pity toward Rosie, since she didn't know that he was the one who made the attack. Roland wanted to know one thing of Rosie, and asked why she was willing to go so far for Layla when the elf race didn't have any relation at all with the demons. But his words surprised her, since it seemed as though he didn't know much about how the Demon Lord was chosen. He already knew that it was not chosen through heredity. Yet despite that, Rosie explained that Layla was still the previous Demon Lord's daughter, and still became the Demon Lord. Layla had always been showing overwhelming talent, ever since she was a child, and didn't give any room for others to object when she became the Demon Lord, making Roland believe that others who were aiming for the position likely held grudges against her. Rosie held a soft expression as she admitted that she and likely many others would sacrifice themselves for Layla. There was another thing that Roland wanted to ask about, making Rosie ask if he was a liar, but he continued and asked who ordered her to do all that she did. If she were the same as the moderates, she would have stayed with the others in the demon world and regarded the radicals' actions as just something to be aware of. He asked her what was her aim for going through all the trouble to find Layla, and telling her the situation about the uprising, to which Rosie said that she was simply just following the order of Layla's father, the Great King. Rosie had told the Great King about Layla's status, and he had told Rosie to tell Layla about the uprising, since she would likely try to stop it, making him figure that Layla's father couldn't sit idly and let the radicals die in vain. The Dark Elf woman said that it was unexpected that Layla had become powerless, but it was very fortunate that a dependable man was by her side. Because of her words, she became flustered and said that those words were just from Layla. But Roland changed the subject and said it was time to check up on Layla. They ended up in the barracks and asked the doctor about Layla's condition, to which the old woman just told them to go confirm it themselves. Roland and Rosie walked into the building and saw Layla lying under the covers, feeling embarrassed about how she was. Layla didn't feel comfortable explaining things with Rosie there, so Roland threw the Dark Elf outside, and Layla, after some reluctance, told Roland that she was just trying out some new recipes a couple of days ago, and had done many taste tests, only to find out that the ingredients were bad. Roland asked if Layla was slow, and this only made her even more flustered. But all Roland knew was that he was glad she was okay. Layla was confused as to how she was the only one who had gotten poisoned, since they had both eaten the same dish. And Roland explained that a bit of poison wouldn't affect him since he was trained for that. She somehow got offended by his words, since she thought that he was saying that her dishes were poison. But he confirmed that was what he was saying. Despite that, Roland patted her on the head and said that she shouldn't have to worry about telling him things, and that she could just try out new recipes again, making her feel touched inside before he kissed her. Rosie and the doctor walked into the building, and the old woman gave Layla some digestive medicine for her stomach before everyone would eventually make their leave. The Dark Elf said that she was going to return to the demon world for a while, since she had something she needed to do. Roland and Layla eventually made their way back to their home, and Roland knew that he was going to have to apologize to Iris for missing a day of work. Layla suddenly spoke and said that the doctor's diagnosis was not what she expected, timidly asking Roland what he would do if she were pregnant. The question caught him off guard, but he could see why she was asking the question, since they had been intimate with each other a lot. Layla admitted that she would be quite happy at the thought of having a child with Roland, to which Roland said when that was to happen, they were still going to aim for a normal life with this child. Meanwhile, a knight named Elvie kneeled in front of King Randolph, thanking him for accepting the request of a small country. The old man said it was the right thing to do, since she was a friend of Almeria, and was from one of the knights who had done well in the war against the demons. They were making an agreement for the sake of prosperity between both countries, and were trying to make Almeria marry a man named Fabian, even if Randolph didn't think his daughter would be happy with the situation. He hoped that she wouldn't throw a tantrum and shut herself in, making him think about getting Roland's help. But he couldn't rely on the dark-haired male every time a situation involving Almeria happened. With an indirect apology, Randolph felt as though he was in a troubling enough situation to need to ask for Roland's help. The next day, Roland went back to work like normal, and was looking at the different requests that were given to the guild with Melia. At some point in their task, Roland had something stuck in his mind and decided to get advice about it from the girl. He didn't omit the truth, but he lied, and said that he heard from his friend that his friend's lover told the friend that she would be happy if she got pregnant, and hearing that made the friend want to hug her. Roland wanted to know the reason why he felt those emotions, and Melia slammed her hands on the table and explained with excitement that it meant that his friend was definitely happy and in love, making the girl think happily about the couple. She went back to looking through the requests and changed the topic when she saw a request that she thought was suitable for Roland, because it was about the requester being troubled by their orchard being ransacked. They finished sorting all of the requests, and Roland went off to investigate the request, borrowing a horse to ride off on, while bringing Layla along in her cat form. The orchard they were making their way to had fruits called onatsu, a yellow-colored sweet and sour fruit. Roland was confused as to why Layla was asking about it, until she said that she was emotionally involved in the quest, since those were the fruits that made one of her favorite foods, onatsu pie. But Roland tried to reassure her that many people sold these fruits. As they went through the road that went through the orchard, giant baboons started to come out of the trees around them. But Roland and Layla were both not alarmed, since they were too busy thinking about the onatsus. Roland proceeded to slice at any and all baboons that tried to get near them. The two of them theorized that whoever was taking the fruits was stealing from the trees, but they were not sure what the thieves were doing with the fruits. So they were going to catch the people responsible for committing this crime, according to Layla. When they arrived, Roland introduced himself to the couple, who explained that they were just a couple living in the fields and getting by from just the income of their orchard. They knew that if the theft continued, their livelihood was at risk. Roland felt upset with the situation, seemingly mostly because the culprit was stealing the normal life of this couple. And Hogan, the husband, wanted to try and find the culprit himself, until he realized that it was likely too dangerous for him, which was wise and true. The wife noticed Layla on the floor staring intently at the table that had the onatsu sitting on plates, and she asked Roland if it was fine for cats to eat onatsus, to which Roland said that the fruits were actually her favorite, and Layla finally got a chance to snatch some of the pieces while the three would continue their discussion. Aside from the culprit being able to climb the fences, Hogan had remembered that the footprints were about the size of an adult human, and that there was also sticky drool on the trees and ground. The thought of an adult drooling everywhere made Roland confused as to what or who could be stealing the fruits, but Hogan interrupted his thoughts and asked how much they should pay for the quest. The dark-haired male said that the fees would vary depending on the quest rank, and that this specific quest would make it either a C or a D rank. But that news made the couple hesitant, since it likely meant a lot of money. Layla seemed to have an epiphany and got Roland's attention, and said that she had a feeling that she knew who the culprit was, making the both of them remember all of the giant baboons they had killed on the way there. He explained to the couple that their orchard likely wouldn't be ransacked anymore, should the culprit be the baboons. Roland still wasn't sure if it was those monsters until Hogan's wife said that she had witnessed them in the nighttime, and Roland decided to bring her out to the corpses of the baboons, further confirming his suspicions, since she recognized them. Roland admitted that he was the one who defeated the baboons, but he knew that it didn't mean that it would end there. Layla told Roland that giant baboons were forest dwellers by nature, so Roland was going to check on the nearby forest and see what's going on. They made their way to the forest as Layla theorized that the reason the monsters would have come all their way from the forest was because of a food shortage. When they entered the forest, they noticed that the forest had very few fruits and nuts, confirming the assumption of a food shortage. The baboons in the forest looked thin and seemed extremely wary and unlikely to attack the two, but the beasts seemed distressed when a loud sound erupted throughout the forest. Layla recognized it and knew that it was an omnivore monster called a plesiosaurus, noticing its head poking out from the trees. The horse was frightened, so they were going to have to run on foot to check it out, realizing that it was not only stealing the food of the baboons, but also eating the monsters themselves. Layla wanted to use her skill as a demon lord, and hopped off Roland's shoulders to try and have a chat with the plesiosaurus, but she seemingly learned that the plesiosaurus was unlikely to leave, making her angry. She decided she was going to go off and wait on the horse while Roland took off his glasses and did not give the monster any mercy. Within seconds, Roland was able to grab the plesiosaurus and spin it around to make it dizzy, giving him the opportunity to use the fallen over trees to stab and kill the monster. They were finally able to leave the forest, and Roland asked if Layla knew the monster, to which Layla dodged the question, and just told Roland that she had decided she was going to return her former subordinates still in the human world to the demon world. Roland said that he was going to help, since he felt an obligation to protect the people's daily lives, and Layla was about to mention how there were only a few plesiosaurus even in the demon world, but Roland didn't see a reason as to why she mentioned that, making her chuckle and decide to dismiss it. Roland got back to the guild and Iris was there to ask Roland why he took so long, causing him to apologize. She was confused as to why he was apologizing, but Roland said that she sounded angry judging from her voice, making the woman conflicted about how she should act around Roland. Iris told him to just have a seat so they could talk about the report, and Iris mentioned that because Roland defeated the plesiosaurus, adventurers in the guild had gone to the forest so they could try to pick up the loot. He said that he was aware and admitted that he was probably just acting rashly, but Iris didn't see it as a rash decision, since she respected that he would help those in need. Roland's eyes were still focused somewhere else, as Iris continued explaining that it was important to build trust by building a relationship between staff and clients, which was what Roland had done a great job with. Iris also thanked the male for bringing the onatsu, and said that would be all for the report. But she remembered that there was a request that the king sent for Roland, giving it to him for him to read later. Roland took it, and before he left, decided to tell Iris that her underwear had been showing the whole time, and he thought she was doing it on purpose, making the woman extremely flustered while he promptly left. A few days later, the guild got a gift from the orchard, and Roland gave each person 2 of the fruits and gave Iris 3, seemingly calming her down and making her not upset anymore from what happened last time. Roland brought the rest home since he knew that it was Layla's favorite, and she felt touched by how attentive he was, proceeding to happily bite down on a piece that Roland gave to her. Later, Roland accepted the request from the king to be a bodyguard in the marriage of Almeria, and told Iris that he was going on a business trip, but Layla thought that he was being taken advantage of. Roland said that normal staff didn't refuse job offers, and they saw the people in the crowd in the distance, proceeding to meet up with King Randolph and stumbling on the old man seemingly getting intimate with a younger woman. The two were frightened and screamed, before Roland threw the woman out and sat in the carriage to talk about the request with Randolph, since Roland didn't want to get involved with political affairs. Randolph said that the male could refuse it if he wanted to, but Roland sighed and said that he might as well help since he was already there, causing the old man to be ecstatic. They were currently heading toward the Somali coast, a neutral territory which made it reassuring to have Roland there. He didn't have much information to tell Roland other than that the marriage partner for Almeria was Fabian Rubens, the first prince of the Divine Kingdom, and his messenger was his knight, Elvi. Roland recognized Elvi's name, and knew that the Rubens kingdom had the second highest authority in the force against the Demon Lord's army, along with the fact that Elvi was part of his party before he defeated the Demon Lord. Since Elvi was like a sister to Almeria, Randolph didn't have the courage to turn her down, and he knew that if the marriage was successful, they would form an alliance as long as Almeria didn't reject it. Roland saw that Randolph was graduating from being a doting parent, asking him while he was at it if he could stop flirting with the woman from earlier, since they were being loud from a distance. This caused the old man to laugh since he was quite aware, and did it so his subordinates wouldn't be bored along the way. Eventually, they came to a small town to rest for a while, and Randolph decided to introduce the knight commander Gregor to Roland. The commander laughed when he learned that Roland introduced himself as a guild staff member, to which Roland asked the old man who knew he was there, but Randolph said that until Gregor, it was only the king himself. Roland asked Gregor if he noticed him in the king's carriage, explaining that the king personally called him in, but in the knight's eyes, Roland should be a suspicious figure. Layla jumped in to insult the knights, causing offense to Gregor, as he proceeded to grab his sword. But Roland grabbed the weapon and stopped it from being unsheathed, saying that if he was an assassin, the king would have been long dead. Layla jumped in again and insulted the knights even more, but Roland had had enough and just stuffed her in the bag and tied it up to prevent her from talking. Randolph told Roland that they were going to leave it at that, and he told Gregor that Roland could be trusted because he was Almeria's tutor, causing an immediate apology and change in behavior in the night. They were going to change the command to lie in Roland's hands, but everyone seemed okay with it once they knew that Roland was just Almeria's tutor. He told everyone to make groups of 10 and position themselves around the carriage with 2 messengers in each group. Gregor asked what he was to do, to which Roland told him to walk unless he wanted to ride a horse and become a messenger. They departed and Layla got to sit on the horse next to Roland, feeling as though the view was nicer without the knights being so close together. She joked and asked if he wanted to join her army, since they would have won more wars with him on their side. But he joked back and said that she would have to be careful of him aiming for her head, since he was stronger than her. Despite her pouting, she gave one last remark, and said that they would have another demon army when they were blessed with a kid. Later, after their departure, one of the groups that Roland made had reported an attack by a group of bandits that was quickly increasing to almost 100 people. Roland told the messengers to ask other groups to create a tight formation while he scouted the area. Layla was impressed to see that the knights were still doing their job well, despite being so rotten as she thought, and Roland passed by to steal one of the knights' weapons and slice through many of the bandits. He told the knights to keep the formation and teach the bandits that the knights were not to be underestimated, giving everyone motivation while Roland would deal with the person who seemed to be the leader. Said leader seemed unalarmed until Roland told him to pay attention to an enemy, to which the stranger tried to attack Roland, who easily deflected the attacks and stole the bandit's weapon, proceeding to slice his arm and stab him in the head before he could use a magical attack. All the rest of the bandits were shocked by this and started to run away with no major casualties for the side of the knights. He praised everyone, but the moment was interrupted by Almeria charging into the area with the energy to bring down the enemy. But Roland explained that they had already retreated. She turned around and saw Roland, immediately making her excited and think that he was there to stop the marriage. Roland said that he was only a bodyguard, but the princess didn't want to hear his words, and said that he should be assured since she was going to refuse the marriage. Another group walked in to report to Roland that Ruben's army was approaching, causing Almeria to immediately leave in disinterest. They greeted Prince Fabian, who was glad to see that everyone was okay without major casualties, and asked if Roland caught the bandits' leader, but Roland said that he killed him, causing Fabian to look down for a moment before smiling and praising them for what they did. As to why he paused for a moment, who knows? Eventually, Fabian and the rest of his army needed to leave to go meet the king of their country and promptly left. As they walked off, Roland knew that Fabian marrying Almeria would become the biggest story ever since the defeat of the Demon Lord, making the both of them hope that it would turn out well. Layla was finally able to get out of her cat form and run around the beach that they were going to stay near while the arranged marriage would happen. She told Roland that she was going to play around for a while he would be called by someone to bring him over to come see the king. He was brought over to this villa with a blue roof and witnessed Almeria being told that she, her father, Fabian, and King Rubens would all be dining together. However, Almeria, with a hesitant expression, tried to timidly say that she wasn't feeling well that day, but Randolph told her that they were already there and that she shouldn't say such selfish things, since they were just going to have some conversation and dinner. Roland jumped into the conversation to speak with the pouting and grumbling girl, to tell her that she was the daughter of a king and that she should grow up a little, making her look even more down and mopey as she said that she understood. With that, the maids walked with Almeria back to her room to prepare for the dinner, and Randolph stood there with a sigh, since he seemed worried for what was to come, since the girl still had to go see the prince all by herself the next day. Elvie walked into the room to give her greetings, and the girl greeted King Randolph, who told the girl that she didn't need to be so formal with him. She was there because she was worried about Almeria, and as a member of the Haydens family, she was given great responsibility to bring the two families together. Elvie turned around with a smile to see where Almeria was, but she was only met with the blank expression and presence of Roland, causing her to become confused for a moment until she became upset, and shouted at him and asked where he had been. The girl started to cry since she explained that everyone was looking for him everywhere, and everyone thought that he had died somewhere, but she was cut off by Roland telling her that while he was sure that she had a lot to talk about, they needed to save it for later, as there was something he wanted to ask about first. After a while of discussion, out on the beach was a lady in an extremely luxurious dress, looking out at the waves. Roland walked out and asked if she thought the sight was beautiful, catching her attention as he also asked her for confirmation about her being Prince Fabian's secretary. She recognized him as the bodyguard commander of Farron, and he wondered if he was disturbing her, trying to be charming and subtle about where he was getting at with his plan. The woman said that he wasn't, and he told her that he was walking around, hoping to see something once again, and finally found it, which made her chuckle and ask what that something was. Roland brought the woman to dinner and they had a wonderful time, smiling at each other, but the day had to come to an end eventually. They walked through the empty streets together and Leonora felt happy since it was the first time a man had asked her out like that, blushing from how much she had drunk because of it. Roland caught her attention, and said that he knew a quiet place to rest and continue their night there, to which she was hesitant for a moment, before blushing even more and agreeing to it. Meanwhile, Layla was sitting at the beach alone while in tears, because she was lonely after Roland had left, but he eventually did come back, which made her ecstatic. She was put back into her cat form and Roland walked back with her, while she told him about how she got too excited about the beach and waves and didn't notice when he left so quickly, making her feel really lonely. They finally reached the room that would be the room of the two of them, and Layla was excited and jumped into the bed, letting out a large sigh of relief since she could finally lie down. Roland looked out the window and knew that it was about time for a certain event, using his magic to summon a shadow to keep watch of this event. He knew that this situation was similar to the Baldur's case, and how it seemed as though he couldn't cut his ties easily with the people he knew. Almeria was currently having her solo meeting with the prince, and he asked her if she was tired and wanted to take a rest, to which she begrudgingly agreed. They sat at a small table and started to eat and drink, Fabian making a suggestion for her to try the pineapple juice, to which Almeria just quietly acknowledged his words. This made the boy twitch as darkness came over his face, since he knew that Almeria was looking uninterested as always, and that her attitude meant that she was feeling forced to be with him. Fabian forced a smile, even though his eyes held a rage, since he was angry that she was supposedly looking down on others like him, just because she was a hero, knowing how he usually wouldn't forgive women who didn't admire him. However, he felt as though it was more interesting that way, watching the girl drink as he wondered what face Almeria would make once everything went to plan. She noticed his stare and asked why he was doing that, to which he lied, and said that he was just mesmerized by her beauty. But he quickly changed the subject, and asked how she liked the drink. Almeria still looked cold but said that it wasn't bad, but Fabian knew that her attitude would soon change, and give him the opportunity to do what he wanted with her. Suddenly, something began to change within the girl, as she pulled away from her drink and Fabian called for her attention, to which Almeria looked toward him and called him by name and honorific to show respect. He grabbed her hand and asked her if she would marry him and become the next queen of the country, and Almeria, with her lifeless eyes, agreed happily. Fabian said that they should tell their fathers about that at the upcoming lunch gathering, and Almeria seemed to agree to this as well, but it was not of her own decision, of course. The prince smiled evilly and believed that the princess was under his belt now, and that he would finally be able to make the princess hero who was originally uninterested in him be able to do what he wanted until he was satisfied. However, something made a small noise, confusing the boy, as he thought that it was the sound of the floor creaking, but it was just the sound of the shadow that Roland summoned running away. Fabian made his way back to the mansion and greeted his father, saying that everything was going to plan. King Rubens chuckled and said that with this, the Farron kingdom would fall into the hands of the Rubens family, making the two of them look forward to the lunch gathering. And this gathering soon came. The four royals sat at the table and ate their food, while everyone else stood on the sidelines. King Rubens tried to make a conversation and asked his son about how the walk with the princess went in the morning, to which both Fabian and Almeria stood up from the table and stood next to each other. While Fabian said that he had something to report, he claimed that he proposed to Almeria and that she accepted, making the entire room erupt in shock and disbelief. Fabian's father told everyone to calm down while Fabian proceeded to try and kiss the girl, but she seemed to whisper something. He got closer to Almeria and asked what she said, until Almeria suddenly punched the prince, saying that she told him not to come any closer. He flew across the room and got his clothes dirtied by the food, but he was more focused on the confusion he felt, since Almeria had broken out of the trance he put her under. Fabian stared with confusion as he wondered why the love potion wasn't doing its job, since he had heard that it was supposed to last for a few months, if not a year. The prince looked around and wondered who could have messed up the plan, and that was when he laid his eyes on Roland, who had a grin while staring at him, confirming his suspicions. King Rubens walked up and asked what was happening, but Fabian tried to make it out to be that Almeria slapped him first, to which the girl said that it was because he was trying to kiss her. She called him many things, but Elvie walked up and told Almeria to calm down, since they didn't understand the situation clearly. Almeria explained that the prince tried to kiss her forcefully, but Fabian tried to say that he wasn't forcing her since she had said all those things before. They continued to argue until Roland walked up and said that he was going to explain what happened, making Randolph surprised about the fact that Roland would know anything about the situation. He said that Almeria returned from the date and seemed to be in a state of intoxication, which was why the girl likely didn't remember the wedding proposal, and why he had helped sober the girl up to let her join the lunch gathering without problem. Fabian tried to say that there was no way for Almeria to get drunk since she only drank juice, but Roland knew and said that the prince had done something to take away the princess's ability to make decisions, causing Fabian to get upset from the accusation. The dark-haired male felt as though things were getting nowhere and asked for a witness to come into the room, to which Leonora entered the dining room and was asked if it was true that Fabian was preparing something before the date. The woman confirmed so and admitted that the prince had ordered her to give a large sum of money to the cafe clerk and tell them to mix a love potion into Almeria's juice. Fabian was getting desperate as he tried to yell at the woman to be quiet, but it was too late, since everyone started to glare and look at the boy with disgust. The prince tried to yell at Leonora, but Leonora talked back and asked him if he even remembered her name, to which he continued to glare and hesitated, since he couldn't answer the question, making Leonora tear up in anger, as she told him that she no longer wanted to do anything with someone who couldn't even remember her name. Everyone in the room was staring at Fabian, including his own father, making him feel cornered as he shouted in anger, and said that everyone was trying to set him up, but Almeria said that it was incorrect, since it was him who tried to set her up. The people in the room were starting to feel bad for Leonora, and worried about what would happen to her family after going against the prince. But Randolph told the woman that there was no need to worry, since she had done the admirable thing by staying honest even when it meant defying her master. From then on, he was going to make sure the Farron kingdom would take care of her and her whole family. Despite what happened, King Rubens still wanted to try and turn around the situation. He supposedly apologized to King Randolph for his son's behavior, and hoped that he could forgive him for his rashness of youth. Fabian was confused as to why his father was turning on him, but King Rubens claimed to not know anything about the situation. However, he tried to turn the situation around once again, and say that while Fabian trying to kiss the princess forcefully was regrettable, he didn't believe that the princess was drugged and then purified, or that a drug to intoxicate people could exist. Almeria tried to attest to the case as the victim, but Rubens dismissed her and asked if she was trying to incite war between the two countries, causing the girl to start to back down. Roland expected that the king would be good with words, and Elvie tried to jump in, but was shut down by King Rubens, who told her that he was expecting great things from her. He also said that the words in report were from a mere guild employee, so he claimed that there was no evidence and that it was possible he was conspiring with the princess to frame Fabian. Randolph jumped into the conversation as well, along with Elvie, who both didn't want King Rubens to defile their honor. Roland decided that he had had enough and took off his glasses, while mentioning something about a Friday purge, making King Rubens recognize Roland as the assassin he used to be, which made him immediately change in behavior and back off. Fabian's father retracted all that he said and tried to pin all of the blame on his son, but Randolph said that they were fathers before kings and needed to take responsibility for their children, to which King Rubens and his son bowed and apologized for their actions. King Randolph forgave them but said that they would have to redeem themselves for the incident, proceeding to promptly leave while King Rubens sat there gripping at his legs with frustration. The old man laughed and felt happy to have brought Roland along to make things go smoothly, but Elvie and Almeria wanted to ask him about the Friday purge, especially since it was the first time to see King Rubens in a panic. Unfortunately, the time for Elvie to depart came and she felt frantic, since she wanted to spend more time with Roland, starting to ask him many questions, including where he lived and if there was someone he loved. He didn't want to answer these questions and just told Elvie to go, making Almeria make fun of the girl. Elvie said that she would write letters every 3 days, but Roland said that was too many, since a new letter would be on its way before the previous letter even got to him, making Elvie frustrated and flustered. She eventually made her leave and Almeria walked off with the taller male, and asked these same questions as Elvie, along with some others. But Roland did not answer these ones either. Eventually, they stumbled upon Layla, who decided to make herself known to Almeria, which made the girl excited, because she was happy to see an animal. Layla explained to the girl that a good woman should be someone that men chased, and these words caused Almeria to see the cat as a mentor, as Layla explained that she was more experienced than Almeria would ever be. Roland realized that it was probably time for him to go, and went off to say his goodbyes to Randolph, who felt bad for troubling the dark-haired male. The old man felt frustrated with everything and admitted that, despite Roland's normal life, he wouldn't have any complaints if Almeria married Roland. Roland apologized and refused, making Randolph sigh, and the king said that he was just going to have to make an heir himself. But Roland had doubts, and he bet 100,000 rin that the king would retire at the age of 57. And Randolph said that he would win within 8 years, with whoever getting the closest age to be the winner. Everyone made their way back, and Layla felt happy to have met Almeria in a positive manner, and hoped that she could be friends with the princess, something that she had learned from Melia, since friends were something that normal people had. Layla remembered something and asked why he had even helped the royals in the first place, since he didn't want to be involved with it and could just leave it be. But Layla believed that he likely just saw them as friends to worry about. A new worldview seemed to dawn on Roland, as he realized that it was not a bad thing to have the want to help the others, even if they were involved with royalty. Putting that aside, Layla had something else to talk about and suddenly gained an expression of rage, since she knew that he had slept with another woman the previous night. She wanted to make a point that while she didn't care what he did with others, she wanted to be the only woman who was unrivaled to others. Layla continued to try and argue, until she eventually became flustered as Roland chuckled and grabbed her face before kissing her, as they stood on the beach together. The next day, Roland went to work and Melia walked up to him and mentioned to him that there had been someone watching them, and making adventurers feel as though they were being stalked. He looked out the window and saw Rosie leaning up against it, scaring Melia as Roland said that he would deal with it. The dark-haired male walked outside and asked what she wanted, as she tried to lie and say that she was in the middle of a walk. But she was bad at lying, and Roland found out that she was observing him ever since he and Layla did something together the previous night. Roland asked many times in many different ways if this was her way of asking to join, making Rosie flustered as she had to admit that she was just there to assess whether he was a suitable partner for Layla or not. He told her that she could do that inside of the guild instead of spying from the window, and walked inside of the building, bringing attention to the two since most people had never seen an elf before, let alone one of Rosie's caliber. Roland told her to observe from the sidelines quietly and walked back to Melia, explaining the situation and saying that it was likely that Rosie had a crush on him. Melia said that was unlikely, since Rosie just seemed to be smiling evilly while staring at Roland, and Melia explained what it would be like for a woman to crush on a man, and how a woman would behave. Rosie was seemingly giving all of the behaviors, making him think even more that Rosie likely had a crush on him. Melia also mentioned that if a woman had a crush on him, he shouldn't act annoyed or ignore them. Rather, he should treat them kindly. When everyone's lunch break happened, he walked outside the guild, making Rosie assume that he was going to throw away Layla's lunch. but he just sat down and said that he was searching for a quiet place to eat, making her feel bad for her assumption. He told her that he was going to share the food with him, causing Rosie to feel conflicted since she felt happy about the offer. She reluctantly accepted it and tasted the wonderful food, before she went back to watching Roland with a hawk-like expression. The dark elf woman watched and watched as Roland went by his normal workday until Iris walked up to him and asked if he could go to a certain place the following Monday. Rosie asked if he was having a confidential talk and being up to no good, but he just said that he was going on a business trip and asked if she wanted to come, making her upset once again. Later, one of the guild staff was begging Roland to come to a drinking party, but Roland was hesitant since he didn't feel the need to drink with strangers. At some point, the employee said that it would be normal for him to join a drinking party to meet new people, and just the mention of something normal immediately changed Roland's mind. Rosie ran off to the men who were walking off and asked if Roland was going to play with other women when he had Layla, but Roland said that it was just a part of work. She still wanted to see this through and reveal his true nature, but Roland told the others that Rosie was harmless, and everyone just continued their way to the bar. Just before they entered, all of the men decided to have a meeting and strategize who would aim for which girl. Morley tried to say that it wasn't as though he had to aim for just one, and the other two tried to fight him about it and say that he couldn't play off the rule of teamwork, since it was likely that love wouldn't come for the man anyway. They all finally walked into the building and all introduced themselves to each other. One of the women, Hilda, asked about Rosie, who was watching, but Roland said that they shouldn't mind her. Two of the women had heard about Roland from Melia, and Roland remembered that these were the two women that Ryan and Shane were aiming for. So Roland used his communication skills to talk to the women and direct them into talking with the other two men, easily being successful about it. All that was left was Morley, but Roland looked over and saw him just staring at Diana's chest, making Roland decide to ignore him and just drink quietly. After a while of drinking, Roland could feel his skill effect dissipating, as Diana started to converse with the dark-haired male. She admitted that she could handle a lot of alcohol, since she would drink when she could, since she was an adventurer. But Morley jumped into the conversation and asked Roland what he was doing talking to his girl. Morley continued to stare at Diana's chest and suddenly tried to hungrily tackle the woman, while saying inappropriate things. But Roland quickly knocked the man out. Everyone continued to drink and eat while Roland got to know the two adventurer women, and how they had heard that all quests that were handled by him went well. He explained that he was simply guiding every adventurer to their full potential, making both women impressed by his professionalism, and causing Diana to wonder what he was hiding behind his facade. She offered another drink, to which he asked if it was already too much, but she was wondering if he would loosen his mouth when he would get drunk, making him feel challenged since he had never gotten drunk before. Eventually, everyone had to go home. Roland said his goodbyes to the thankful men, who were able to talk to the girls who they wanted to. The two men and the two women walked off, while one of the last two women was being carried out on his back, and Tatam was walking beside him. The shorter girl asked if they could do this again sometime, to which he casually accepted, before walking the girl back to the inn she was staying at. Diana, the last girl, led the man to a certain direction, which was a quieter place that people wouldn't come to often, meaning that they could be risky and do certain things together in peace. Or at least that's what they thought, until they were interrupted by Rosie in the distance being harassed by some men. Roland apologized and said that he had business to attend to and walked off, to which Diana chuckled to herself and knew that she wouldn't let him go so easily next time. The dark-haired male made his way to the men and scared them off, saying that there were rumors about him having 3,000 adventurers as his underlings. Rosie was surprised by this news even though it was a lie and an exaggeration, but he was more focused on telling the dark elf woman to be more careful next time. She thanked him before becoming flustered and running off angrily, saying that she still didn't acknowledge him. She watched her run off and squinted his eyes since he felt like he was forgetting something. But it probably wasn't too important. Due to talking with Iris before, the branch director had told Roland to go participate in a training course on Monday, to which Roland did as instructed and brought Layla along as well. Layla laid in the bed and mentioned how it was slightly worse than the previous villa, which was an aristocrat's villa and couldn't be compared with. She looked at the paper that Iris gave Roland and was confused as to why humans would have to hold a training course every single year. But the dark-haired male explained that it made sense, since it was important to enforce the policy regularly for everyone within the organization. The demon woman didn't particularly care about what was happening and was just excited for food when he was back, to which Roland reluctantly affirmed. Layla was going to explore what the city was like while he was gone, but Roland warned her that the guard had increased in the city because the princess was psychologically attacked by a demon not long ago, something Layla was already aware of. Roland was impressed that something like this had happened at all, since Almeria would have been fine against average demons, so it must have been a strong one. Layla chuckled at this before bidding goodbye to Roland and making her way to the bustling city. Excitement filled the woman as she walked through the crowded capital and was impressed at how diverse the races were there, getting quickly distracted by the smell of good food from a stall on the street. Layla ordered 2 of the kebabs that were being grilled by the old lady, but Layla seemed to notice a strange hooded figure in the distance. She was brought back to reality when the lady asked for the payment, but Layla soon realized that she couldn't find her purse, making the woman start to panic as the lady realized that Layla likely had been pickpocketed. The demon woman started to tear up dramatically since it was her favorite purse that Roland had bought for her. But that same hooded figure from before suddenly walked up to Layla and told her that they could pay for the food as long as Layla would tell them something in exchange. When Layla turned around, that was when her eyes widened in shock when she recognized who was under the hood. Meanwhile, Roland was making his way to the training course. He entered a building and sat down at a desk, hearing about how the lecturer for that day was the apprentice of a grand magician called Gilman, a name that seemed familiar to Roland. A man entered the room and got everyone's attention, boastfully introducing himself as Samuel before starting the lecture. Roland already noticed that this man's energy did not match his knowledge, since Samuel was only teaching basic magic knowledge. The man next to Roland asked if Roland was going to take notes, but Roland told him that he was the type to memorize info, impressing the spiky-haired man. Roland realized that many of the employees at the course didn't know much about magic, and eventually Samuel demonstrated flame magic to everyone. Roland noticed something wrong with it and asked to give a demonstration of his own, explaining that magic circles should be drawn simpler for faster casting time, as he drew his own circle and cast a stronger flame spell. The lecturer fell to the floor in shock, while everyone in the room was surprised and in awe at Roland's skills, while Samuel asked who Roland was, to which the dark-haired male responded that the question should be his own. Samuel was confused until Roland explained that Gilman didn't take apprentices, making the lecturer feel intimidated by Roland's cold glare. Within seconds, Roland switched back to his normal attitude and helped Samuel up, before walking back to his seat and saying that was it for him. Samuel walked back to the chalkboard to continue the lecture, but everyone in the room was already distracted, and some of the people around Roland tapped on his shoulder and asked him if he could show the magic once more. They were all happy to have seen him stand up to the lecturer, since he would always look down on all of the employees while boasting about his current position. These 3 asked Roland about his former position, but Roland would only respond that he didn't have much of a background, and that they should focus on paying attention to the lecture. Unfortunately, there was nothing to pay attention to anymore, since Samuel had already seemingly left just like that, likely ashamed of what had happened. The 3 decided to introduce themselves as Roy, Shayla, and Nina, to which Roland reluctantly introduced himself, while wondering why he needed to introduce himself to people he wouldn't meet again. Shayla heard that the lecturer was sponsored by an aristocrat, but Roland was confused as to what sponsored meant. He learned that being sponsored by an aristocrat meant that a person had something like a private army, gaining this title after usually having tutored the children of aristocrats or being their bodyguards. Roy suddenly asked Roland if he would be in trouble after giving his opinion to Samuel, mentioning that he heard about a colleague being threatened and fired after doing the same. Roland casually said he didn't do anything wrong, but a knight suddenly burst through the doors of the lecture hall and asked who mocked Samuel, to which Roland stood up and made himself known before the other employees could warn him. Roland didn't know what was wrong with what he did until Shayla explained that staying quiet was the normal thing to do, making him feel as though he was careless about what he did. He tried to play it off and say that he didn't want to cause trouble, making them feel touched by how good he was until the knight told Roland to hurry up. The knight asked for Roland's name, but Roland refused without hesitation, and said that a true knight would honor etiquette before anything else, making the knight extremely upset and tried to punch Roland. This punch was not something new to Roland as he dodged it, yet still made it as if he were punched, falling to the floor while the knight was confused since he didn't feel the punch either. The knight still tried to boast about it anyway while Nina would run over and worry to Roland, who held his right cheek in fake pain, correcting its placement when Nina said that he was punched on his left. Suddenly, the windows of the lecture hall were broken, as a large and intimidating aura was felt outside the window. Before it was known to be Almeria, with Layla tagging along. Almeria was in a rage and didn't listen to Layla's words telling her to calm down, since she believed that this knight had punched Roland. But the knight didn't know either that Almeria was angry at him, kneeling down and trying to introduce himself. Roland tried to tell the knight to run, which confused him, until the princess smashed her fist into the ground and ordered the knight to apologize to Roland, to which the knight frantically did until Roland told the knight to go, while he would take care of the situation. The knight left, as Roland asked Almeria what she was doing there, and if princesses always had this much time. Almeria told the dark-haired male to shut up and asked if Layla was his friend, saying that Layla had brought her there when she asked where he was. He remembered that Layla was in her cat form when she and Almeria first met, but where was she now? Either way, Roland needed to establish what was going on and asked why she came to the lecture hall, only for the girl to explain that she wanted to accompany him to dinner if he was going to be eating alone. All Roland could do was stare with bafflement as Almeria continued trying to explain herself, but Roland told her that he had told her many times to not let her anger get the better of her. Despite that, he did thank her for what she did, since it was for his sake. Almeria chuckled sheepishly and asked if he wanted her to wait for him, but Roland coldly told the girl that he had come to do a job and didn't want to be disturbed, making the princess become exasperated before eventually running out the window back home. Roland had relayed the entire story to Layla later at dinner, and the demon chuckled at the thought of it. She said that Almeria was strong, but that she wouldn't be defeated by her if she didn't have the collar on her, to which Roland agreed. Layla also mentioned that the feelings Almeria had for Roland were closer to love than respect, wondering why he hadn't accepted her. But Roland said that Almeria was still too childish, and that Layla was the closest to being a perfect woman. These words took Layla by surprise, and she started to drink even more, getting drunk even faster than she was. Roland told her to stop drinking more until he was interrupted by Samuel at a nearby table, drunkenly insulting him to another person at the table. The man was chugging his alcohol while bragging about the one time he was taught by Gilman, while Layla was also chugging on her alcohol and wondering when she was going to get a child with Roland. Eventually, Samuel noticed Roland there and challenged him to a duel, but Layla thought Samuel was talking to her and accepted the challenge. Samuel was too focused on Layla's beauty and told the woman to jump at his chest, but Layla suddenly collapsed due to her drunkenness and accidentally pulled down the pants of the balding man in front of the whole restaurant. She started to cackle at how small something of Samuel's was, before she was knocked out by Roland, who apologized to the other person for the trouble and told them to have a good night. The next day, Roland went to the lecture hall and was chatting with the other three from the previous day, until someone walked into the building and called for him, saying that Count Zygmus Constantine was asking for his presence. People were wondering why Zygmus was asking for Roland, but it was likely because of the previous day's incident with Samuel. Shayla told the male to be careful with his words when speaking to him, as everyone else grimaced as well, mentioning rumors about people getting beheaded if they rubbed him the wrong way. Roland took note of these rumors and went to the room where the Count was sitting with a confident grin. Zygmus started to discuss the things that happened with Roland and Samuel the previous day, and how people were starting to think that the establishment was teaching ineffective magic. This aristocrat tried to get Roland to apologize to Samuel in front of everyone, but Roland refused, making Zygmus pick up the sword next to him and point it at Roland's throat, asking if Roland was the same as him and had killed many people. While this was true, Zygmus was unaware of the number of people that Roland had killed in his lifetime, assuming it was around 5 or 10, while boasting about how he himself had killed 16 people in total, and could still remember everything clearly. Roland grabbed the tip of the blade with just 2 fingers, and Zygmus was confused as to why he couldn't move the sword. But Roland didn't respond and just said that Zygmus could only hear the voices of the dead because it was a hallucination of his conscience, calling him a cute, fledgling assassin. It was likely that Zygmus was murdering people by impulse only to hurt his conscience every time, and make him have to escape reality by drinking his worries away. Roland told the man not to forget the people that he had killed, because they would want him forever, causing Zygmus to ask just how many people Roland had killed. All Roland responded with was a question about how many times Zygmus has breathed in his lifetime. After that was over, Roland told the aristocrat to tell Samuel that he apologized for embarrassing him, to which Zygmus had already moved on. There was something else the man wanted to ask of Roland, and it was how much money Roland wanted in order to be recruited. But Roland said that he already had taken a liking to his current job, proceeding to turn around to face the doors. Zygmus asked who Roland really was, to which the dark-haired male said that he was simply an employee of the guild before leaving. Roland made his way back to the place he was staying at with Layla, and saw that she was still having a horrible hangover from all of the drinking she had done the previous night. He told her that they were going home now, surprising her as she felt as though she hadn't played enough where they were. The dark-haired male just told the demon woman that she could just set a gate so they could get there at any time she liked, making her calm down immediately. Suddenly, a person ran up to Roland and told him that the guildmaster, Taro Palo, was asking for his presence. This name was familiar to Roland. He told this messenger to tell Taro that he had already left, but the messenger insisted and begged for Roland to come. Roland sighed and made a disappointed face before agreeing, following the messenger to a certain building and walking to the top, as the messenger told Roland to behave in front of the master. The dark-haired male said that he would, but the messenger knew that Roland didn't mean any of his words. He casually walked into the room at the end of the hallway despite the frantic words of the messenger, and was greeted by Taro, who excitedly walked up to Roland. Taro was surprised to see that Roland had really become a guild staff member, and Roland figured it was Taro who told Iris that he was a former assassin, to which the shorter male laughed and apologized. Taro immediately got to the point and said that there were two important things he wanted to talk about with Roland, one of them being about a large-scale quest. In the Lati branch, whenever a large-scale quest emerged, the nearest adventurers would immediately go to deal with it. However, things would always become troublesome and dangerous, or the quest would not get finished due to adventurers fighting over command. So Taro wanted to issue tactical advisors, with Roland being one of them. Roland immediately refused and asked why he should be one, to which Taro said that was the second thing he wanted to talk about, and asked Roland if he knew the current situation in the demon world. There had apparently been rumors of the demons talking about the revival of the Demon Lord, so Taro wanted Roland to take command if a large-scale quest were to emerge. With enough begging, Roland finally agreed, and Taro was happy, saying that he would give more details later. As Roland was about to leave the room, the shorter male suddenly asked if Roland knew anything about the revival of the Demon Lord, but Roland said that he didn't, and that the Demon Lord was defeated by the hero's party. He proceeded to leave and rode a horse back to his town through a gate, and Layla seemed a bit down, thinking that the demons were probably referring to her. Roland said that it was possible to be a different person, making her feel a bit better as she changed the subject and felt excited that he was being promoted to tactical advisor. She wanted to celebrate with some sake, but Roland knew that this was just an excuse to drink again. Roland thought about why Taro had asked him if he knew something about the situation, since the only people who knew he defeated the Demon Lord was King Randolph. Layla asked what was wrong, but Roland said that it was nothing, and just continued on. She told him that they should visit that place again on holiday, to which Roland responded that she better not let her wallet get stolen next time, making her groan in frustration from the memory. A day had come when a man by the name of Lenny Conti had somehow found his way to Roland's house, claiming that he wanted Layla in exchange for not exposing their secret. This strange man said that he wanted the demon woman for his collection of slaves, but he knew that Roland's answer was going to be no. He asked Roland if he was sure, since he knew everything there was to know about Layla and their relationship thanks to his skill. But Layla wanted to say one thing, and that was a warning to not anger Roland. Lenny looked over with a smug grin and laughed, wondering what was so scary about Roland, until the dark-haired male said that while Lenny's clairvoyance skill was powerful, he relied on it too much. Long story short, Lenny was killed and the nearby birds fed on his body. Roland had gone to work, and Amelia asked about Lenny, and if that man had come to Roland's house. But Roland said that he didn't know anything about that, making Amelia less worried, even though she thought about how scary a skill of clairvoyance would be. Roland agreed, but he knew that there were some things better left unknown. Once he was home, Layla talked about how foolish Lenny was, and mentioned how she had never seen Roland that angry before, wondering if he thought she would have gotten taken away by that man. He wanted to dismiss it, but admitted that he would have felt it would be inconvenient if Layla was taken away. Layla wrapped her arms around the male and said a foreign word that Roland didn't recognize and asked about, until she explained that it was an ancient demon word that meant, "May your happiness never end," to which Roland kissed her hand and set it back. She blushed and was about to kiss him until he pulled away, making her confused and upset, until he walked to the front door because there were people outside. The people in question were the previous slaves of the Lenny guy that Roland killed earlier. They didn't know what to give him as thanks for saving them, so they were there to offer assistance. He asked them if they wanted to try to become adventurers, something that they didn't refuse, and so he and Layla helped clean them up. Layla had also made them some food, to which the girls thanked, as one of them told Roland that even if he didn't help them, someone would have done it sooner or later. Eventually, the girls asked if he could give them names, but Layla already jumped into the conversation and named all of them: Iru, Lian, Sanzu, and Su. They all thanked the demon woman and addressed her as a married woman, making her feel happy. Roland decided that the girls were going to stay with them for the time being and told them that they wouldn't be treated cruelly anymore, though he was worried about whether they would pass the adventurer's exam or not. Surprisingly enough, though, everyone passed. Iru had horrible practical skills yet inaptitude for magic. Lian was the reverse of Iru, and had the characteristics of beast folk which would help while being a scout. Sanzu had the unique raw power of a dwarf, and still had a lot to grow in, while Su, as expected of an elf, had an aptitude for magic and a skill in archery. Roland wondered why Lenny had these 4 girls specifically as slaves, but knew that they would all grow exponentially if they trained properly. He wanted them to form a team together. However, the 4 of them argued about who would be leader. Eventually, they settled on rock, paper, scissors, only to have Iru win. Once that was settled, Roland told them to take a quest by the counter and come to him with any questions, to which they responded that he could rely on them for help as well. The next day, the girls had been doing many quests. the most recent being watching over a field. A duo overheard the quest and wondered why they were doing such a quest, since they could do something less boring and with more reward. But the girls didn't seem unhappy with the quests and excitedly came back with the desire to do another. Roland asked if Sue had any complaints because she was being a bit quieter, but she dismissed it and made Roland walk off to find another quest. People in the building were gossiping and wondering what was the relationship between him and the girls, making wild assumptions just because they called him by a respectful honorific. Eventually, Roland gave them a quest about collecting detoxification grass, something that had no limit to the amount they could bring in, and they were already off without any hesitation. Melia was impressed that he gave them a different quest, but he knew that they would have gotten bored if he kept giving them smaller quests. However, the girl asked what he was going to do about the other quest that Iris gave to them. But luckily, Neil and his accomplice walked through the door, and Roland knew the perfect people for the job. Eventually, the girls finished the quest and were given a lot of money for the quest, surprising them greatly, as they asked him to come with them to eat some good food with the money they had gotten. They fought over who would sit where in regards to Roland, but Melia was able to distract them with the idea of buying cute outfits to surprise Roland with, making them immediately run out the door. Sue stayed for a moment, as she was about to ask why he had given them a quest that gave a higher reward, but she eventually decided otherwise and thanked him before she walked off as well. Melia said that he had been exposed and told him to finish work before the girls returned, to which he agreed. Meanwhile, Neil and his accomplice were doing the gutter cleaning quest that the girls were supposed to do earlier. His accomplice was complaining about the stench, but Neil told him to stop complaining as it was a quest given by Roland, and to not let success get to one's head. Another day at work meant that more crazy situations for Roland's normal life would occur. An employee called for Roland's attention about a person who wanted to apply to become an adventurer. He noticed that she hadn't filled in the reason for wanting to become an adventurer, and the woman pulled down her hood to reveal her beauty to everyone in the guild, introducing herself as Candy Meinert. Roland was not affected by her looks and asked about her reason for wanting to become an adventurer, to which she said that it was unnecessary since it was obvious that she needed money. The dark-haired male pulled out an orb for the woman to hold her hands up over since it was going to measure her magic power. It glowed brightly and caused a slight bit of wind to flow against Candy's clothes and hair. When she was done, the orb crackled a little, while everyone in the guild was in awe. Roland told the woman that her nominal value was 1,000, meaning that she had C-grade level magic. People were chatting amongst one another and said that an S-grade value was 10,000, so this strange woman was a big rookie. Candy giggled once she had found out about that and called it amazing, claiming that she was feeling a bit embarrassed, as some sort of energy seemed to flow out of her that seemingly charmed the male employees behind Roland against their will. Roland was completely unaffected by this action, as the two male employees fell to the floor, feeling weak in their knees while the female employees stared in disgust. Roland wrote down in his notes how the woman had an excellent amount of magical power, and could actually pass her with the number alone, making Candy almost excited, until he told her that he was going to have her take the practical test just to make sure of something. She hesitated for a moment before agreeing and walking outside with the taller male. He told her that there was no restriction and she could attack him with anything while not holding back, since it was all just a test, to which Candy proceeded to activate a magic circle under her with ease, and summon a staff from the ground. The woman chuckled and asked if he was scared enough to stop the battle right there, but Roland just stood there with a blank expression and told Candy to hurry up and attack him. She was silent for a moment, before telling him that he shouldn't blame her if he died, but Roland confidently and casually said that he wouldn't be defeated by someone who couldn't even measure their opponent's strength. These words made her angry, as she proceeded to immediately thrust her staff at the taller male, but he was able to swiftly dodge it and suddenly appear behind her. She turned around to try and use her charm magic against him like earlier, but he had no problem dispelling it just like earlier too. Candy fell to the ground with confusion and stared up at him, asking how he knew, to which he told her that it was a secret. They went back inside and Roland told her that she had passed the test, saying that she would be treated as an adventurer from now on and could take quests starting the next day. She was more focused on the fact that there was a man who was stronger than her, yet every other man in the guild was busy trying to ask the beautiful woman out to dinner, to team up with them, or even to marry them. Candy had turned all of them down and said that she already had plans with Roland that night, walking off with him to some unknown location that he told her was going to be a surprise. Eventually, they ended up at Roland's house, confusing the woman as she asked if it was a restaurant. He corrected her and told her that it was his home, and was interrupted by Layla coming out to greet him and ask if he wanted to have a bath together with her. Roland asked if she could just say, "Welcome home," normally, but this was only met with a laugh since he never corrected her all the previous times. Suddenly, Candy seemed to recognize Layla and called for her attention, making Layla turn toward the woman. Layla eventually remembered who this mysterious woman was and called her Dee, jumping off the porch and bringing the woman into a hug, as Layla said that she was glad she was safe, since she thought that she was killed by the hero. Candy almost thought that this was an imposter, but there was no way for it to be. Yet she was still confused as to why Layla had no more magic power. The demon woman explained that she was officially dead publicly because of circumstances and brought the woman in for dinner. Candy's real name was Candace Meinrad, and she was a vampire affiliated to the Demon Lord's army, something that Roland seemed to have realized quite early. He explained all of the traits of how he knew and how it was easy for him to figure it out, especially since she could remember the traits from the last Great War. Layla asked the vampiric woman why she was becoming an adventurer for the money and restricting her identity, but Candy said that she was not being forced to do anything and was just trying to have fun. The woman asked if this fun was manipulating men with her demon eyes, to which Candy didn't hide the fact and confirmed it, claiming that it was all in self-defense. Roland knew that that was not so truthful, since she was trying to use it in the practical test, and Candy said that it was because he was too strong. Their exchange making Layla jealous as she told Candy that she couldn't use her demon eyes on him. Candy was surprised that Layla had become a maiden who had changed from her previous solitary self, making Layla flustered. Roland jumped into the conversation and asked the vampiric woman if she was going to live as an adventurer. Candy confirmed that that was her plan, and Layla said that the woman could stay at their house until she had gathered enough money for her next journey. The night went by and Roland was washing the dishes with Candy. He asked her if she was fine with the thirst of not drinking blood for long periods of time, to which she made a joking tease about him being interested in her. Roland was just curious, as she explained that it was a roller coaster, but that she couldn't get enough of the horrible feeling of hunger before satisfying it with the ecstasy of sucking blood. He asked her if she wanted to suck his blood, causing the woman to become shocked and flustered, saying that Layla would scold her if she did that. But Roland said that Layla always took long baths anyway. The next day, Candy was frustrated over the fact that it was hard to do as many quests as possible to gain the money to become independent. Roland said that everyone started from the F rank and the rewards would be comparable to the rank, making her feel disappointed, as he told her that they should look some more and that his ears were open to any requests she had. Candy mentioned that she was not too good with sunlight, and while she could use Fire Guard to make it not affect her body, she would prefer quests without the sun. He walked off to try and find a quest with a high reward at nighttime, until he was interrupted by Iris walking up to him and giving him a letter. As the branch director walked off, Melia's groans of frustration could be heard, as Roland asked what was going on. The girl explained that the quests nearing their deadlines had been starting to pile up. They were either quests that dealt with nighttime or were weird requests for high rewards. But this seemed to be the perfect opportunity. Roland asked what would happen if a quest were to pass the deadline, which Melia explained that the guild would have to explain to the requester that no one accepted it, and it would usually have the reward or rank adjusted. But Melia said that if they did that too much, the people's trust in the guild would decrease. Melia felt as though she was going to have to give up on all the requests, but Roland said that there was no need, as he had someone suitable for all of them. After a while, all of the quests that had been piling up had been decreasing due to Candy's help. Some employees were wondering what was happening to the recent requests that were all about to be cancelled, only to find out that it was Candy who did them, making them seem impressed and in awe. Roland was talking to the vampiric woman and was processing more quests for the woman. Candy was hearing about how she had been getting recognized for her talents, but she knew that one of the quests she was involved with needed the help of Rosie, since Candy was not a person who liked insects. The woman noticed how Roland had a good reputation, and said that she was going to do her best to not bring disgrace to his name. But Roland told her to not worry about it and gave her some more quests to do that could be done during the nighttime. She went off to do the quests on her own time, and Roland continued his day of work, processing many more quests for adventurers. Iris walked up to the dark-haired male and said that there was another letter for him from the same person as before, making it the second letter. He was reading through it until Neil and his accomplice barged through the guild doors and greeted him, asking if there were any good requests to recommend them. Roland turned toward the two men and was silent for a moment, before saying that they came at the right time and had a favor to ask of them, making them almost worried that he was going to make them clean the ditch again. Sometime later, Candy eventually had done enough jobs to where she felt she had the ability to move out of the house of Roland and Layla. Roland wondered if she was really going to do that, since they really didn't mind. But the vampiric woman explained that she found an affordable inn, and had the money to use. Besides that reason, she also needed to move out, since she felt another hunger that she wasn't going to suppress if she continued being near him. But she was sure Layla wouldn't want that to happen. Roland was impressed at the loyalty of the woman, but Candy said that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have someone as wonderful as Layla. Just before Candy was able to go, Layla ran out and gave her a handmade lunchbox, making the woman joke that Rosie would be jealous. She proceeded to leave, and Roland asked Layla about a vampire's thirst, and how Candy was able to satiate it back in Makai, to which Layla explained that she used to give small amounts of human prisoners' blood. However, Layla mentioned that Candy said that human blood was too delicious to just be in small amounts. Roland wondered if he needed to be more careful around the vampiric woman, but Layla said that there was nothing to worry about. Eventually, Candy came back for more quests from the guild. However, there was something odd about her. She seemed more reserved and closed off, seemingly forgetting things and acting fatigued. Roland told the woman to not force herself too much or else Layla would get worried. But Candy seemingly fixed her attitude and said that there was nothing to be worried about. Everyone noticed Candy's presence and talked about her with admiration as she walked out, while Neil and his accomplice walked into the building to tell Roland about the thing he requested. They told him about the things that they had heard and found, while Roland felt the need to do his own investigation. He went around the city and figured that Candy had seemingly not been staying in any nearby inn for the past few days, making him start investigating the worst possible situation first. That was related to the 2 letters that he had received from Sir Bartle. The letters were talking about some adventurers going missing, making Bartle feel a bit worried about the amount of people disappearing in a short period of time. Roland was worried and hoped that the disappearances had nothing to do with Candy, as he approached a large villa, seeing the vampiric woman standing outside of it. This villa was something that Neil and the other guy had mentioned to him, how there had been a woman visiting it for the past few days, so it made Roland wonder if she lived there. He entered the building and saw Candy entering a room, where he could hear the sounds of pained screams. There was a nearby room that the dark-haired male was able to break into, only to find out that it was an old torture room. There were corpses that were too damaged to be recognized, and he saw a locked door, meaning that there were likely people being held behind it. Suddenly, Candy found him there and tried to attack him, but that was when he knew what was wrong, slamming her to the ground and dispelling the hypnosis that was cast on her. She woke up with confusion and asked Roland what was wrong, but he had the same question, and saw that the vampiric woman had no memory since one of the last quests that she had done. Roland walked over to the locked door and opened it, confirming that it was the adventurers who had been kidnapped and he was going to release them. However, a man had walked into the room with guards and asked who he was. Roland casually introduced himself and explained that he had followed Candy to see why she was acting strangely, only to end up in the villa. The shorter male said that he was going to have to file a complaint with the guild, until Roland explained that the feudal lord had requested him to investigate the missing adventurers, making Roland ask why there were people locked up in the room. The man tried to pin the blame on Candy, and claimed that she used her demon eyes on him to entice him and make him do these horrible things, making Roland realize that this man had been in the war before, and likely knew Candy's true identity. Roland asked if the vampire's thirst was so overwhelming to the point that it would lift the hypnosis magic, causing the man to almost slip his words. The vampiric woman jumped into the conversation and asked what was happening, to which Roland explained that the man was using her vampire identity to camouflage his hobby of torturing people. This made her angry, as it meant that she likely drank a stranger's blood, summoning her magic as she explained that vampires were prideful beings who chose which food deserved to be a part of them. She killed the guards around him and he tried to use his own magic against her, until Roland punched him in the face, asking if Roland wanted to make the Dalton family his enemy. Roland didn't care, since he was going to report the matter to King Randolph, confusing the shorter male since he didn't know what relationship Roland had with the king. Candy felt offended on Roland's part, but he calmed him down and said that he still needed to teach him something, asking the man to lie on the bed in the torture room. He started to cry and beg frantically, but Candy asked what the man did with the people who pleaded with him as well before they were tortured. Roland grabbed him by his hair and pulled him to the table, as he explained that he wasn't going to die easily. Eventually, they had killed the culprit behind the missing people and brought a sack with his dead body to Sir Bartle. Roland was explaining how he wanted there to be a healer at the place, getting interrupted by Bartle when he said that the man deserved it, until Roland continued that he was going to ask the healer to heal the man in order to injure him repeatedly. Everyone in the room was silent for a moment, until Sir Bartle thanked Roland for listening to the request and solving the case. Apparently, the experiences that this man had gone through during the previous Great War made him that way, but that was not an excuse, and Roland was still going to report it to the Dalton family, who would likely understand the situation once they saw the crime scene. Bartle tried to give a reward to Roland for the help, but he refused it and excused themselves. As they left, Candy wondered why he refused the reward, to which he explained that he didn't do it for the reward. Roland had a question for the woman, and asked how a person like her was able to be hypnotized by that level of guy. She felt almost embarrassed, but explained that vampires became vulnerable when the sun was out, especially against magic. Roland remembered that vampires only appeared at night during the Great War, making him realize that Fireguard only allowed vampires to act when the sun was out, and couldn't protect them from much. Candy admitted that it was the first time that she had told that to a human, but Roland's lips were sealed. Once they started walking back to the house, Candy started to realize that the man probably didn't know that she was a vampire and hypnotized her for the simple reason that she was a beautiful woman. Roland smacked her on the head and told her not to underestimate humans, and to not make him worry about her, to which she teased and said that he was going to make her serious about him if he kept up those words. Eventually, the two ended up back at the house, and Candy thanked Roland for saving her from being forced to drink the blood of some horrible man. She admitted that the act of sucking someone's blood was almost similar to the act of intimacy, making her embarrassed and frustrated that she almost did it unconsciously with someone she found inferior. Candy thanked him again, but Roland didn't think it was so much of a big deal. However, Candy saw it differently. She was starting to understand why Layla loved Roland, as Candy was starting to feel that way too, proceeding to hug the taller male and bite into his neck, yet she didn't draw any blood. He was confused, but he didn't mind. But she explained to him that it was proof of courtship, since it was intentional to show that she treasured him and loved him from the bottom of her heart. She drew her own blood and asked him to drink it, to make her become his, which he did without hesitation, making her cry tears of joy. They shared a kiss and hugged again, but someone was there to witness that kiss and ask what was going on. Roland tried to make the excuse that that was how the ritual went, and Layla tried to hold back everything in her to do anything, as she yelled that she didn't believe that. Eventually, the two had put the vampiric woman to sleep, and Roland tried to explain himself again, but Layla said that there was no need, since she could smell the blood on him and could guess what happened. Roland grabbed her face, causing her to blush and pull away in surprise, as he told her that she didn't have to wait for him. Layla explained that she did it because she wanted to, even if she didn't expect to see such a scene. She was glad he was safe, and welcomed him back with soft eyes, proceeding to kiss him as the sun started to rise. It was another day at Roland's job, except things were slightly different, as the place was bustling with adventurers and the employees all seemed restless. The dark-haired male was confused at the sight, while Melia mentioned that there were 3 employees who came from headquarters, making Roland wonder if something happened. Morley jumped in to scoff at them and tell them to stop slacking off, as they went back to the counters to continue helping adventurers with processing their requests. This just seemed like another normal day at first, where nothing could go wrong, even with the occasional people arguing in the guild building. However, 2 people who started arguing started to bring magic into their argument, and didn't care about the people around them in the environment. Roland noticed what was about to happen and called out to Melia as the sparks formed in the air, and before anyone knew what was going on, the building exploded. Everyone either watched or ran with confusion at what happened, and the employees and adventurers got out from under the debris. Roland had made sure that Melia was okay during the blast, while adventurers were either using their healing magic to help anyone hurt, or were talking about the quarrel between the 2 people who caused this. Melia thought that it was a lover's quarrel, but Roland believed that it was something more, and that the explosion was a distraction, since it was unthinkable for 2 grown adults to cause such a scene over cheating. He thought more and more about it until he theorized and concluded that it was terrorism, and was about to run off to catch them, until the people who caused it had already taken responsibility and apologized. Iris walked out and was confused at the mess, while Melia and Roland decided to leave the matter to the branch director, who seemingly let the couple off with a stern warning despite what had happened. However, no matter what punishment she would have given them, the guild had to be temporarily closed for repairs, which made Iris remember about representatives from headquarters visiting the guild and giving them a large sum of money. People thought that would be used for the repair cost, but Iris told them that they should use the money to have a recreational trip. All the employees got into carriages and set off toward their vacation destination, and Melia leaned out the window with a happy expression, to which Iris told the girl to not do that, as it was dangerous. Melia apologized and Layla huffed in annoyance from the excitement of the girl, until Roland asked Layla who forgot her wallet because she was looking forward to the trip, causing the demon woman to shut up. Iris was surprised to see Roland willing to come to such an event, but he knew that he was only coming because Layla wanted to go. To which the woman herself spoke up again and asked him why he was in a carriage filled with only women. He said that it was just a coincidence because he was popular, and that he was having a perfectly normal life, a value of Roland's that Layla still struggled to understand. Melia asked what he was mumbling about, and he dismissed it, as the girl continued the conversation and mentioned that she had brought her swimsuit, making all the girls in the carriage complain about not bringing their own. Iris began checking the shop lists with a flustered face, while Layla spoke with a questioning tone about the swimsuits, making Roland wonder if there were none in the demon world. After the long carriage journey, everyone entered the building they would stay at and walked into their respective rooms. Layla got out of her cat form and sat on the bed happily, as Melia entered the room and asked if he wanted to go sightseeing with her. The girl was surprised to see Layla there since she wasn't an employee,
but Layla told the girl to not sweat the details. The demon woman suddenly jumped out of bed and told Roland that she was taking Melia out to buy a swimsuit, to which Roland apologized and told Melia to take care of Layla, giving the girl no choice but to agree with the situation. They left, and later in the day, Candy entered the room with a complaint of him overworking her, as he asked the vampire woman if she had found out anything about drugs being involved in any nearby areas. She hugged him and laid in his arms while explaining her findings, and how a drug called Second was popular in the red light district, and it would give people temporary pleasure but cause addiction, making Roland realize how troublesome the situation was. When Candy had scouted the area for a few days, she found a suspicious shop that Roland wanted to be shown to, and Roland had this whole investigation happen because there was a letter sent by Elvie that read about a drug circulating within a certain region of her country. Roland and Candy stumbled upon an alleyway where a man was talking to Melia, and he was telling her that she could earn a lot of money by working at their shop. The two recognized Melia, and Roland wondered where Layla had gone, while Candy explained to the taller male that the man talking to Melia was the person that a lot of people claimed they got their drugs from. He walked into the alleyway and told Candy to look for Layla, while the strange man tried to pull Melia in a certain direction, until Roland jumped in and incapacitated the man. Melia was surprised to see Roland there, but he told her that following the man would lead to bad things happening to her. She was surprised to hear these words and was told to return to the inn while he would chat with the man, instructions which the girl hesitantly followed. Roland looked down at the freckled man and immediately asked about the drug, but the stranger pretended to not know anything about it, until one of his fingers was broken by Roland, causing the man to scream. The dark-haired male asked again and threatened to break another finger, until the man gave in and said that he was told to find good-looking women and give them the drug he was given. Roland believed that this man was the only one distributing the drug, until the man explained that there were 3 other people as well, and asked why Roland was making such a big deal of it. These words angered Roland as he grabbed the man by the collar, and he told him that the drug was a poison that was rotting people's bodies and minds, and could make people forget who they were and not be able to live without the drug. People including the man's acquaintances, girlfriend, and family. The stranger was bewildered and shocked by the new information, and told Roland that his master was a man with red hair and sharp eyes, who would visit the shop from time to time, agreeing to lead Roland to the shop. As the two men walked there, the man explained how his master would come into the shop twice a week to replenish the drug, and how the drug was likely stored in a warehouse in Kotka. He had also explained that a lot of women were addicted to the drug. They eventually stumbled upon the shop and Roland was satisfied with how far he had come, telling the man to dispose of the drug after leaving, to which the man agreed without hesitation. He left and was surprised to feel that his fingers weren't broken anymore, as Roland proceeded to investigate the area, finding a gate behind the building while remembering what Rosie said, and how the person who cast the gate was likely someone on par with Rosie or stronger. Roland walked through it and ended up on a hill near the mansion of someone called Baron Marty Kucera, as guards told him to leave. He was surprised to see that a feudal lord was involved in the matter, proceeding to use his assassin skills to sneak past the guard and stare at the room at the top of the mansion before climbing up to the 3rd floor with ease. The man sitting on the balcony was shocked and asked who Roland was, to which Roland said that he was a guest, even though that was a clear lie. The Baron tried to call for the guards, as Roland tried to explain that he was from the Special Public Safety Division of the Farand Kingdom, which was also a lie, but not far from the truth either. He explained to Marty Kucera that he had heard about a strange drug circulating and was there to investigate it, but the Baron tried to say that he could do whatever he wanted in his own territory. Roland said that the land belonged to the kingdom. However, Marty Kucera insisted that the people only existed to benefit their lord, and pulled out the sword while yelling about how he was law. The dark-haired male dodged the attack and called the Baron a pig before knocking him out and telling him to learn to be normal. He was brought to the king along with Roland to explain the situation that Rudolph was completely unaware of. The drug was now banned in the Farand Kingdom, and those who manufactured, distributed, and used it would be punished, and the punishment for the Baron himself would be that he would be relinquished of his title, territory, and assets. He was being taken away until Roland spoke up and said that he wanted to ask questions about who made the drug, since he already knew that it was a demon's work. But before anything else could happen, the Baron started to scream and chant about how he was going to be killed. Earlier, Melia and Layla were together and walking through the bustling markets of the place they were at. The girl wondered what style Layla preferred, only to find out that Layla didn't know what a swimsuit was, since she was so confused why people wouldn't just go naked. Melia became frantic and told the demon woman that being naked was indecent and wouldn't be allowed. But Layla still tried to insist that people could just remove their clothes in the water, since they wouldn't be seen by others. The girl started to dramatically explain that maidens were all about wearing cute clothes, and how it was their longing to wear these clothes to show them to the person they like. They went into the shop together and Melia started to show Layla around, before picking something out and asking if the swimsuit would look cute on her, to which Layla said it wasn't bad, and asked the girl if she could pick something out for her. Melia wasn't against the idea, but felt as though anything would suit Layla due to her envious beauty. However, Layla seemed to have noticed someone in the distance in the crowd, and started to run off after them before Melia could notice where she went, and this was how the two had gotten separated. Layla ran through the crowd of people and kept chasing after this mysterious man who had a coat swaying from his shoulders. She continued following him until he stopped at a warehouse building, and the demon woman wondered if she should call out to him, but she didn't want to be mistaken and make an embarrassing scene after following the man, and not seeing his face clearly. Layla saw the man walk into the building and attempted to open the door herself. However, it didn't budge. She stared through the window with a pout as someone walked behind her, that person being Candy. The vampiric woman told Layla that Roland was looking for her, but Layla couldn't leave since she believed that Luther, her brother, was alive, and that she saw him enter the building they were next to. Candy took a look in the building and felt as though the situation was getting bad, not feeling as though she could handle things if Luther was involved. Layla asked what was inside the sacks, and Candy was about to explain, until the very man they believed was alive had walked out and greeted them with a grin. The demon woman was excited to see him, but he wondered if she was truly his sister, since he didn't feel any magic power from her, to which she said that she would explain later. Candy walked up and asked Luther what he was doing at the warehouse, but he only glared at the vampiric woman and sent a wave of energy over her that made her feel weakened. He told her to be gone, as Layla tried to tell her brother that they should go back to the demon world, but he called that world boring and said that he could be himself in the human world, explaining that the food was delicious, the women were beautiful, and that he wouldn't be compared with a genius. Luther asked Candy what she knew, to which the vampiric woman lied, until Luther continued and said that the demon lord was dead, since there was no demon lord without magic power. Candy realized what was happening and told Layla to run, since everyone in the army knew that Luther despised Layla's existence, as the man himself claimed that the Layla in front of him was just a fake. He activated his powers and Candy stepped in to try to protect Layla, but she was unfortunately stabbed through the gut within seconds. Layla stared with shock and disbelief as to what happened, and Luther kneeled down to admit to his sister that he always despised her, but was glad that she was now just a small fry. He attempted to kill her as well, but she did not move or flinch, as she knew that she would be saved by Roland kicking Luther away. The dark-haired male called Luther lesser, but Luther was overconfident since Roland was just a human. Layla explained that this man was her brother, and Roland recognized him as one of the army commanders, telling the demon man that he changed his mind about capturing him. Roland told Luther that he could kill him, making Layla flinch in surprise, as she stared silently despite the sad expression. Roland tried to get any sort of information about the drugs out of Luther, but Luther refused to speak about it and just attacked Roland. The ex-assassin dodged it with ease, and recognized the technique, but saw how Luther was lacking in every category of skill, thus proceeding to ask him if he had only been bullying the weak. Roland was able to see that he could fight Luther while talking, while his sister didn't give him any leeway in their battle, meaning that even he could use the same technique. Luther was shocked to see a human use it, but Roland told him to not underestimate humans. Layla walked up to her brother and explained how it was Roland who had defeated her, confusing him about why she was siding with a human, and how she was an embarrassment to the demon race. Roland punched him again, and said that Layla was still worried about her subordinates after the war, but the demon woman agreed that she was an embarrassment, since she ended up loving Roland. Hearing this, Luther believed even more that Layla was not fit to be the demon lord. She tried to explain the inferiority of the races wasn't important, but that only angered him since she didn't deserve to say that after how many comrades had died because of her. Layla agreed with that, because in the past, there were many bloodthirsty factions that she tried to avoid the issue over, and that was one of the reasons she waged war. Being responsible was also one of the Demon Lord's duties, but she felt fed up with everything in the end, until meeting Roland gave her the opportunity to change. Luther wondered how powerful Roland was to change Layla that much, before he decided to lie down in defeat and said that the situation was boring, to which Roland agreed, before killing Luther. Roland and Layla walked off with Candy in his arms as he asked about spirit magic, something that was banned in the demon world because of the burden it would put on the caster. The dark-haired male didn't care since he was going to revive Candy no matter the risk, and she hoped he succeeded since she didn't want him to die. They walked into the forest and placed Candy's body down on the grass as Roland proceeded to use the spirit magic on the vampire woman. Everything glowed brightly and pieces of his skin started to peel and fly off of him. Layla called out to him as everything went white, and Roland seemed to have just now woken up. Roland stretched his body and complained about how his body felt heavy, to which Layla yelled at him and said that it was to be expected since he used high-level magic. He didn't see the problem since it had only been 2 days, and he asked her about the time she used it herself, to which she admitted that she used it on her pet in the past, Ortenberg. She complained about his condition and said that he needed to rest more, but Roland still needed to figure out who was distributing the drug. Layla mentioned that Second was a pain-killing drug in the demon world that used to be powder type, before becoming a liquid type medicine, mentioning how it wasn't harmful to demons but seemed to just have a side effect to humans. She wondered how her brother got the knowledge about all of this, and Candy walked into the room and explained that she seemed to be perfectly healthy all thanks to Roland. Candy was surprised, and thought it convenient that her vampire thirst was now gone, and told Roland that he should hurry, making him confused as Layla seemed to be hiding something from him. After he was made to get ready, Roland was brought to the beach, where everyone was in swimsuits, and Layla was complaining about how she couldn't go naked. Everyone greeted Roland and was glad that he recovered, and started talking with one another, before being confused as to why Roland was stretching, until he casually said that he was going to swim to the island on the other side. The girls were confused as to why he would do that when they were already having fun, but his mind was already made up, so the girls decided to coerce Layla into taking off the towel, since she wouldn't be able to play with them otherwise. The demon woman finally took off the towel and walked off to play with the others, while Roland did a bit of swimming. The day went by fast and everyone was exhausted in the end, as Candy asked where Iris and Melia were, to which Roland explained that they went to prepare for a barbecue. Suddenly, people started to crowd around someone and said that an elf washed ashore, only for Roland and the 2 others to realize it was Rosie. This was apparently Rosie's true form, but the thing they were focusing on was the fact that she was in the sea in the first place. They decided to dismiss it and go with Iris and Melia since they were done with the barbecue, eating happily until night eventually came. The next day, Melia tried to see if Roland was doing anything with Layla, but he said that she went shopping, which made the girl excited as she asked him if they could go on a stroll, to which he agreed. She told him to meet up with her in 30 minutes, and he closed the door on the excited girl while checking how much money he had. During that, Candy walked in and asked if he was free in the evening, to which he hesitated and thought about before confirming. She told him to come to the rocky area along the coast to have fun, and didn't explain further before leaving. Roland went to prepare for the day as Iris walked in to ask if he had plans, only to find out that Melia had invited him somewhere, making her disappointed. He spoke up again and thanked Iris for yesterday, and was glad that Layla and Candy were happy as well, making Iris sigh about how she was surrounded by pretty girls all the time, before buttoning up his shirt and telling him to not overdo it. They both left the room as she told him that she was going to watch the work of the branch in their area due to a note she received, and Roland went to meet up with Melia. They walked off together and Melia talked about how it felt like a date, which made Roland realize why she invited him. Roland bought something from one of the markets and Melia realized the time, starting to think about lunch before finding a seafood restaurant to eat at. He remembered Candy and told Melia that he was going to the restroom and started sprinting toward the coast, jumping down to silently land near the vampiric woman, who was sighing about where he was. He greeted her and pretended that he had already been there, before realizing that the fun she was talking about was fishing. He threw the line out and wondered if 2 people needed to be there, to which she said that it was needed, since they could have fun while waiting. But Roland didn't have time to have fun. Roland said something got caught, and gave Candy the rod before diving into the water and summoning shadows to pull on the fishing line, making Candy confused as to what was pulling on it. Roland was able to leap back and made his way back to the restaurant to Melia, who was shocked to see him now drenched. He lied and said that it was sweat from his stomach pain, and that they should focus on eating, proceeding to chat during their meal as 2 little shadows told the dark-haired male that they needed his help. He needed to leave again and Melia wondered if she needed to get medicine, but he told her that he would get it himself, and ran out again to buy a large fish before running toward the coast again, as he jumped into the water to attach the fish to the line. Candy pulled it out of the water and was confused as to why it was dead, until Roland walked up to her and convinced her that it was because it exhausted its strength, making her want to have it for dinner with him. He apologized and said that he had plans, and would make it up in the near future, before quickly leaving back to the restaurant where Melia was confused about the seaweed on his head. But they continued their food and left the building, while the girl was happy that his stomachache was healed. She was about to ask if they could do something else now, but he noticed Layla in the distance, which made him dismiss her and tell her that he could treat her after he was recovered, making her smile at the thought. Roland walked off to greet Layla, who was seemingly having fun by herself, before the dark-haired male gave her a gift. She snatched it out of his hands and put it in her hair. He complimented it, and she was now in a good mood, not asking about why it was wet. Layla said that she wanted to treat him to dinner as a thanks for the gift, and found a good seafood restaurant. Roland thought she meant the one that he and Melia went to, but Layla pulled him in another direction and said that they were going to walk with just the two of them for a while. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Rosie was in bed, mumbling to herself, while the nurses said that she kept having bad dreams, seeming as though she had been abandoned. The next day, Layla and Roland were in bed after their dinner and fun, and she pointed at the scar on his stomach, and mentioned how she didn't notice it back at the beach, surprised that even someone like him could get hurt. Roland agreed and said that there were more scars, proceeding to turn over and reveal the several scars that were on his back. Even with that, Layla still wondered and was curious as to why there was only that one scar on the front of the body. Her eyes stared with anticipation, but Roland told the demon woman that it was not an interesting story, and that he was simply just inexperienced at the time of the scar. Layla was surprised by his refusal, and felt almost disappointed before Roland went off to get ready for the day. He went to work and was greeted by a D-rank adventurer named Sasha Grid, who asked if she could have a request of high reward. Roland looked through the quests and found a security quest, where the recent torrential rains destroyed the main bridge, and made the old road be used as a detour route. She took a look at it as Roland said that the road was narrow, and there were many passers-by, people that she would have to protect until the bridge was repaired. Sasha turned to leave, and said that she was going to try the quest for one day, and if it suited her, she would accept it. Later in the day, a horse with a messenger on it barged into the guild and told everyone in the building that there was a problem. There had apparently been a large gatehawk that appeared on the old road, and the adventurers on site couldn't handle it, to which the man asked them to make an official request to Lord Bartle and have it be treated as an emergency quest. The employees around the place started to get frantic and shouted at each other about the quest form, and what information would be needed on it, along with how long it would take for the form to even be reviewed by the feudal lord. They decided that it was rank B and needed to find adventurers for the quest, thinking about how the emergency quest had come at a bad time, and how they might need to seek help from other guilds. Suddenly, Iris walked in and shouted at everyone to calm down, and everyone seemed to immediately stop what they were doing as the woman had her eyes focused on Roland. She walked up to the dark-haired male and asked him if he could handle the situation, since the safety of the people on the old road was their top priority. He accepted the task without hesitation, and proceeded to borrow the messenger's horse, while all the employees asked if Roland was truly going there empty-handed. Roland said that all he needed was that one body of his, and everyone in the building stared with awe at how cool he was, before he swiftly set off, seemingly remembering the one scar on the front of his body. He rode the horse to the forest and knew that gatehawks were dangerous demon birds that ate humans, and mainly lived in mountainous areas, so it was not strange to encounter them at the old road, but no one had ever seen them, so the potential danger was not included in the quest. Roland knew that a large gatehawk could swallow an adult, so he needed to act fast and stumbled upon some adventurers who were shouting for his help about the bird they encountered. He asked them if they knew an adventurer called Sasha, and remembered the girl they were with, before mentioning that she was further down the road, since the girl said she would do something about the bird. The dark-haired male quickly rode off again, despite the warnings of the two adventurers, but they didn't know about the skill of Roland. Sasha was seen trying to fight off against the large bird, while other adventurers were lying on the ground with blood around them, as Sasha kept shooting arrows at the gatehawk. Unfortunately, it did not steer off, as the large monster intimidated Sasha before trying to swoop in to eat her, causing her to fall to the ground and scream in fear as she waited for the release of death. But death never came. She opened her eyes and realized that Roland was right there in front of her, and throwing stones at the gatehawk, before he leapt up and stabbed a sword through its head, killing it. Sasha ran up to Roland and thanked him, while feeling disappointed that she couldn't handle the gatehawk after realizing how big it was. But she had something else to focus on as she noticed that his glasses were broken, and that his appearance was recognizable without the accessory. This was apparently the second time he had saved her, but Roland tried to say that she was mistaken, and proceeded to return to the guild to report the situation, while she waited for the rescue team. As he rode off, he was surprised to see that someone remembered him, not dwelling on the thought anymore as he went back. When Roland returned to the guild, the employees were seemingly reenacting what happened right before he left, and talking about how cool he was while he could clearly hear them. Sasha looked over her shoulder and noticed how he seemed to have a good reputation around the guild, and heard that all adventurers in the city said the same thing, causing him to say that he was honored to be talked about positively. The girl pouted and said that he didn't put heart into his words, as he proceeded to tell her that there were no D-rank quests that had good rewards that day, so she decided that she was going to try the other rank quests. Roland remembered that there was one E-rank quest where the mission was to gather gooseberries, an ingredient to create recovery medicine. Despite what he told her, she seemed to be focused on something else, and that was how Roland truly looked different with glasses on even if they didn't have lenses. Sasha asked him why he lied to her, but he insisted that he didn't lie, and that he just wears the glasses for fashion, causing her to laugh at the response. He gave her the quest and Sasha decided to accept it, while he recommended that if an unexpected monster appeared like the other day, she should run away immediately. She reminded him that she was a D-rank adventurer and asked if he was a worrywart, but he told the girl that he only said such things to people who were likely to do reckless things, and people who were likely to fail, making her complain about the mean words. To cut the conversation short, he apologized and told her that she was holding up everyone else in the line. As she turned around and saw the many people standing behind her, Sasha ran off and gave a smile, while saying that she was going to finish the quest quickly and return, proceeding to leave as Melia walked up to Roland and asked about her. Roland said that the girl was being suspicious of him for some reason, and Melia jumped to the conclusion while thinking that Sasha was a stalker. The dark-haired male didn't believe that, even though Melia continued insisting that it could be a possibility, telling him that if anything troubled him, he could consult with her. As she ran off, she wondered if it was true that he had saved her, making her understand the feeling of wanting to stalk him. Roland stared at the front doors of the guild while thinking about Sasha, thinking that she would have become a slave even if she survived after he saved her. He dismissed the thought and continued his workday, helping many adventurers with their requests like usual. At some point, Melia stretched and said that having a normal life was the best. The word normal caught Roland's attention and made him stare at her, as she asked if she overreacted, to which he said that she didn't. Melia mentioned that she hated rushing things and would mess up because of it, before remembering that she was going to be visiting his house that day after work to teach Layla how to cook. As the girl walked off to continue her work, he thought about her words and thought it was a wise quote. Later, the employees were cleaning up the guild and getting ready to get home. As Roland continued to stare outside of the door, Melia walked up to him in confusion and asked why he was looking outside, as he explained that he was waiting for Sasha after she left to do her gathering quest. Both him and Melia wondered if something had happened to her during it. He decided to check it out after all and told Melia to relay the message to Layla, proceeding to get on a horse and riding off into the forest where the gathering quest was supposed to take place. At the forest, there were two men who had seemingly knocked Sasha out and discussing what they were going to do with her, deciding that they were going to sell her after having their way with her. One of them mentioned that she was an adventurer and likely was already used by many men, and how adding them to wouldn't make a change, proceeding to start undressing the unconscious girl, while they both undressed themselves too while talking about how they wouldn't care about waking her up. What the two men didn't notice was Roland grabbing a stick and lighting it aflame, before putting it on the rears of the two men, causing them to shout in pain and fall to the ground, while asking who Roland was. He refused to answer their questions and told them to be gone, before he used one of their swords to cut off their things and used them as firewood. This didn't immediately scare them away, as he stepped on one of their rears and asked if he wanted them to put the sword into them, causing them to have horrified looks before they tried to run away. Eventually, Sasha woke up and realized that she was being held by Roland while they rode back to the city on the horse. She asked what happened, as he omitted the truth and said that she just hit her head and went unconscious in the woods. The girl wondered why he was there, and he said that he had an employee hunch, before she said that this situation made it the third time he saved her, to which he disagreed and said it was the second. He brought her back and told Sasha to go to the hospital if she didn't feel good, proceeding to leave before she grabbed his shirt, as she wanted to say something to him. Sasha hesitated for a moment before asking Roland if she was not good enough for him, as she wanted to offer her thanks just for one night. But Roland slapped her hand away and told her to not misunderstand the situation. He quickly returned to his house and was greeted by Layla, who was surprised that he returned so quickly. Layla mentioned that Melia was going to be late, and Roland responded dryly, making the demon woman wonder what was the matter with him since he had been absent-minded the past few days. She raised an eyebrow and jokingly teased him by asking if Iris bullied him, but she still cared and hugged him close, while telling him that she could lend him an ear if he really wanted to talk about it. Roland sighed and said that it was not a fun story, but Layla insisted and said that it's fine to hear, making him take off his glasses before admitting that the scar on his stomach was during his third mission. In an assassin's line of work, something will always happen. In his past, he would still remember all of the required information for each assassination and how he knew that he had to accomplish this specific one before dawn. His master, Amy, told him to do it well, since he would always panic with things he didn't expect, and that he should adapt to the situation and never forget what she has always said to him. In their line of work, something would always happen. Roland was about to carry out the assassination, only to realize that someone had finished it for him. But he had already revealed himself and couldn't process the situation, causing him to be unable to adapt. Suddenly, the man's daughter opened the door and the mystery assassin tried to stab the girl, until Roland jumped in to take the blow before Roland slashed the assassin back. And that was how he got the scar on his stomach. Layla patted his head for comfort as he explained that his master scolded him while treating him. But he knew that it was expected, since he was an inexperienced kid despite having memorized everything, as reality was a completely different matter. He knew that he would have succeeded if he were just a minute earlier, but he only failed and was plagued with guilt after learning that the daughter's whereabouts were unknown. Layla heard about Melia seeing a female adventurer lately and asked if that was the girl, to which Roland agreed and said that he was atoning for his sins. But Layla told him to not shoulder the sins of other people. Roland admitted that he would have forgotten about it if he was still an assassin, but as he is now, he wanted to try to help the girl. Layla told him that he should and would allow it, still surprised to hear that he was stabbed when he was so young. She assumed he was about 17 or so at the time, until he said that he was around 11, shocking her as he explained that the day his master picked him up was the day of his 5th birthday, and the 3rd assassination was 6 years after that. The age might be wrong, but it shouldn't be that far off. After that day, he never got stabbed from the front again, and Layla told him that he could always share his stories with her, as she was always his ally, causing Roland to smile and kiss Layla, which made her excited. Another day at the guild and Sasha was there, claiming that she wanted to take a quest from Roland. Melia tried to explain that Roland wasn't there, but Sasha could see him over Melia's shoulder, to which Melia insisted that Roland was busy. The dark-haired male was confused as to why Melia came up with that lie, before the other employees gossiped with one another about the sight of Melia trying to keep Sasha away from Roland. Roland only saw it in a professional way, and said that it was normal for adventurers to choose the employee they trusted the most, something the others agreed with if it weren't for the lack of empathy from Roland. The others explained that there were no other adventurers, and that this situation was a sign from God, telling Roland to continue watching the situation even if he believed that it would be more efficient to switch places with him. The two girls continued arguing until Sasha had to admit that she was there just to see Roland, but Amelia still refused as the argument continued, while the others stared with bewildered faces until Morley interrupted them and told them that it was not a temp agency, but they just told him to shut up and go away, making him feel offended as he started yelling at Sasha for calling him old. He said that he was going to give the girl advice, and that people shouldn't be obsessive over the people they're interested in, or else they would be met with muscular fathers or hostile rejection, things that he went through himself. One of the employees was confused until another explained that Morley would follow the women interested in Roland around and try to hit on them, until they were so creeped out that they would move away, something he started to cry about as Sasha and Melia didn't know what to do. Roland decided to take over as Morley was taken away while Roland asked Sasha how he could help her. She apologized for disturbing him, and said that she wanted to talk to him badly, so he decided to take her outside and let her talk, as she told him that she was reflecting on everything. The girl told him that she wouldn't trouble him anymore because she was moving somewhere else, to which he wasn't worried about. Sasha noticed how many women were trying to get his attention, and said that she didn't think she would ever meet him again, but she was glad he saved her as a kid. He still tried to refuse that happening, but she insisted. However, after thinking about her past and what happened now, she finally understood that the girl from the mansion no longer existed, along with the same man who saved her that night. She was just an adventurer, and he was just a guild employee, and she came to the guild to say goodbye so that she wouldn't be lost in her past anymore. Roland asked her if she had plans, making her joke about his concern, until she said that anything could happen since she was an adventurer. Sasha thanked him one last time and shook his hand before leaving, to which Roland asked about Iris eavesdropping behind a tree. She apologized and said that it was Melia's doing, before Iris told him that he shouldn't mix public and private matters, surprising him, but he walked off and said that there was someone else she needed to say that to before him. In another day in the daily life of Roland as a guild employee, he received a letter from the headquarters, and he was about to read it until someone at the counter called out for someone. He walked up and told her that it was lunch break, causing the girl to groan in disappointment, until he recognized her as Carolina Besley, a person who applied to become an adventurer but never got examined at the time. Roland remembered the drawn-on form and told her that he was the examiner and could start the exam right away, to which she agreed. The girl tried to say that he could call her Lena, but he continued with her regular name and he said that he would ask some questions before they would measure her magic. Once the questions were done, she was told to put her hands on the orb, but Carolina wanted to pass on the measurement. However, Roland insisted that it was required. She tried to say that she didn't plan to fight or take combat quests, but he explained that the locations of gathering quests needed adventurers to be prepared in the emergency to fight, making her pout at how he was correct. He wondered what to do with the girl and said that they should do the practice exam in the nearby square, yet she wanted to skip that as well. Roland said that she would fail otherwise, but Carolina didn't believe that her poison resistance skill would help, and Roland asked why she wanted to become an adventurer. She admitted that she just wanted to become an herbalist, making him realize that becoming an adventurer would be her first milestone, which she agreed to, since many others managed to become adventurers in the guild. If she failed, she would go to another guild, since she believed that she could truly help others by joining parties. Roland learned that her resistance to poison would make the effect reduce by 10%, and he thought about it for a moment before saying that it was a wonderful skill, causing her to blush and stare in shock, since it was the first time someone had said that to her. He decided that he would pass her under one condition, and told her about the guild's regional differences, and how there was an area called the Fatine Wetlands, which had a hot and humid climate, but quests had started to appear that regularly dealt with poison, and that poison made people investigating the place dizzy and nauseated. The girl felt excited at the idea of this quest, since it should be safe for her, and she realized that taking quests near this wetland was the condition, causing her to thank Roland, since this was her 6th guild to ask, which was making her almost lose hope. Roland felt as though he was about to lose hope as well, since he was bad at dealing with those types of people, as he watched her leave, but the situation was now done. Later, Roland asked an adventurer if he wanted to take a quest, but he seemed silent and stressed, causing Roland to say that the man could take a quest another day if he felt unwell. The man became frantic and stammered until he told Roland to stop seducing a girl he knew named Marissa. Roland was confused, until the man continued before being interrupted by Neil and his accomplice, threatening the man for saying such words to Roland. But Roland told them that threatening people wasn't allowed. The two apologized to Roland before being told to apologize to the man, as both Roland and the man apologized to each other. Roland brought the topic back, as the man, whose name is Gil, explained that Marissa was his childhood friend, and that she was taking more quests than usual since she felt as though the receptionist was cool and would praise her after her hard work, or scold her when she did bad. Roland wanted to be that kind of receptionist, until Gil explained that Marissa was talking about him, and asked Roland to stop giving Marissa quests. But Roland knew that this was all because of jealousy. After a quick few confirmations, Roland said that he would accept the terms if he confessed his feelings to Marissa, making him shocked and nervous, until Gil decided to accept the conditions. Melia wondered what would happen and felt excited, as she deemed herself the love police. The next day, Melia's answers would be found, as Gil came back with Marissa and said that they were now together. Gil thanked Roland for the help, and Marissa whispered to the dark-haired male to tell him to keep it a secret that she consulted with him as well. The lovers walked out, as Neil and his accomplice stared with confusion about what childhood friends, girlfriends, and lovers were, and started to cry and beg Roland to teach them how to be popular, causing him to become a love consultant for a while.